actions. Bob Thompson, appointments by the president, and media questions and adjourn. Any changes? And I know there are some. Who wants to go first?
I'll do the whole list.
You have the whole.
I do.
Except for one.
Well, I just added it.
No, I want to add one that you don't have. That
Oh,
I
excuse
just-
me.
Terry, you do yours. And then we'll-
Okay, I'm gonna try to do this, but I probably won't get it.
Fire away.
Okay, we have, I'll do the easy one first. We have an appointment to add Judy Giffen for environmental and natural assets. And then we have some motions. We have a motion to protect the islands northeast of Osprey Point from additional erosion. That's Marty Clark.
Can you talk louder,
Under new
please?
business?
This is all under new business. Okay, correct, Tom? Yeah.
Yes. Well, at least that is.
Yeah, they all are. Motion, review of FO2, FO3, and FO5, Dan Stachersky. Motion, administration of the Yacht Club contract, Dan. Oh, here, Marty, I have a list for you. And motion from Bill Cordwell regarding letter, sending official communication to county commissioners regarding municipality. Dan.
You got one, I've got one more to add.
I think, yeah, I don't have, and I think that's it.
Well, no, I would suggest two things, Madam Secretary. First, I would suggest moving item number 2 under new business, the first reading of revision to M09 search committee to old business, because in fact it is. We first introduced that in July, and we're bringing it back because we have a new board and some new revisions from.
We can't hear you, sir. You gotta use the microphone closer.
Hi, is that better? Habla español, señor. Sorry. So I would move that to old business.
Okay.
Secondly, if it's permissible under President's remarks, I would like to make a brief report on the Comprehensive Plan Committee's current progress. So they have had a very interesting meeting last week and have asked the board to consider doing something like pass that.
And you would be making that?
Yes, I would be making that.
Okay.
After President's remarks.
Yeah, and Terry, also under new business at the end, I'm going to enter into the minutes, a package. Can you hear that? I'm going to enter into the minutes a package from the county commissioners meeting that I had attended yesterday. Other than I can read it. If you would like me to read it into the minutes, I can do that, but you suggested that I just enter the whole package in.
My guess is we would vote that motion down and reading the whole thing.
Okay.
Okay, any other changes?
Yes, sir. Mr. Watkins from the Marine Advisory Committee will not be giving his report at this meeting. He will be giving it in the October meeting.
Okay, so that's moved on. Anything else? Motion to approve agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to the approval of minutes. June 26th. Any adjustments or changes to the minutes of that meeting?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Under old business, you're saying here on page 7 of 8,
Okay.
we're talking about a mistake of signing the extension without
Barney,
defining.
use your microphone. We can't hear you.
Talking about a mistake of signing the extension without votes, when in fact it was just a violation of the bylaws because the votes had nothing to do with it. I mean, if he'd gotten consent, it would have been fine. We didn't have that. There never was a vote. It was just a call for a unanimous consent, two different things. So I'm saying, and if you go back to the videotape, that's exactly what the president, Mr. Terry, said.
Okay.
extension
Make that
of
change.
violation of bylaws.
Yep. All right, make that change.
And I think that Terry's name is misspelled. Maybe not.
Where?
Sorry, it's repeated. Now there,
I don't know where you are, Marty. Page
who's this?
7 under old business or new business?
This is seven.
Oh, I'll check into it.
Okay. Any other changes?
That's on 26.
Okay. All those in favor of accepting as amended? Opposed? All right.
Present.
July 17th.
Move to approve as written.
Second.
There's a change. Of course, I don't have the copy, I made the changes on. There's verbiage in here that Clark wanted to take out. You know, it's so obvious it's wrong. I can't find it. Capital improvement plan, you know what, it might be corrected on this one. Was there any changes made to this after the Senate? Give me a second.
Your name is in the last sentence.
Here it is. 2 of 4, referring to page 7. Remove the sentence, all contracts will be competitively bid. That's exactly the opposite of what I said. It said competitively bid whenever possible or something, and went on to say that they could be done by sole sourcing, and we agreed that could happen, but that shouldn't be in the apprentice of the rule. I tried to go back and watch that video. There was some video problems.
All right, so what are you saying the words ought to be?
They ought to be exactly what they say there. All contracts will be competitively bid. I mean, we could say, to wrap that paragraph in a nutshell, as you read our financial, what do we call it? Oh, God, in the policy manual, financial management, it says the same thing, that we're going to bid everything competitively.
I don't understand, Marty. It says all contracts will be competitively billed. You did not.
It says, I say, remove the sentence.
Yeah, the sentence as it reads is referring to as if Marty was asking for it to be removed.
Okay.
Let's just take that sentence out if it's incorrect. Just take it out. I mean, what you said was all contracts should be competitively bid.
Correct, and it says that also
Right.
in the,
Right.
Okay. Okay,
actually, I have the exact wording if you want it. You want it?
I'll get it.
Yeah.
I have it.
I got it right here.
If you got it, give it to Terry and we'll update it.
Yeah, you know what, I don't. Nope. Sorry.
Oh, never mind.
I can get it, Marty, don't worry about it. I got it.
The first sentence.
But that's, it's not remove that.
Can't take that out. I mean, the issue is,
Got it. You probably said removing all contracts will be competitively bid is bad business practice, but I would have to double check
all right, we'll just double check that.
that. I will.
I mean, I didn't say remove competitive bidding.
I
Double
will,
check
I
that.
will get it corrected, I'll bring it back next month.
Next month, bring it back next month. And August 20th.
Yeah, I have a change. It says that this is the organizational meeting. And it says that Dan Stachurski was appointed as parliamentarian by acclamation. That's not true. It was 6 votes to 1. 6 for, 1 against. I was the one against.
That's right.
Not a joke. I was against.
Fair enough. The acclamation. All right, we'll make that change. Now, can I have a motion to move to close on this?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye, opposed, none. Thank you. Mr. Tursky, you still have the job whether you wanted it or not. How's that? You like that?
I tried.
You like that? You gave it a shot. Okay. Dan, you said you wanted to insert some words from the comprehensive plan report at this point. Go right ahead.
You're passing it.
Go ahead.
The Comprehensive Plans Committee met last week at Salisbury University. Two members of the committee met with Dr. Memo Diriker, that's Memodiriker. He is an assistant professor in the School of Business and the founding director of the Business Economic and Community Outreach Network, called Beacon. Beacon is the premier business and economic research and consulting unit of the Franklin P. Purdue School of Business of Salisbury University, and does a lot of work with local organizations, including places like Ocean Pines. The object of this meeting was to discuss whether Dr. Diriker and his team could help Ocean Pines in the development of a good comprehensive plan revision for the one that we developed and we're still living with. That was approved in 1997.
Long time ago.
Dr. Diriker and his group do not work for free, and he was only speaking to two people on the comprehensive plan who had neither the authority nor any feel for what the board would be willing to tolerate here. So he asked them to ask me to ask the board if, in fact, he could address the board at our next work session, which would be first week in October.
October 5th.
Yeah, October 5th. The issue with that is that he's only available in the evening, so we would have to move the time of that meeting to accommodate if in fact the one was Dr. Diriker talking about.
All right. Work session, hold on.
Saturday morning, Marty just said that he will not be in town. So we might.
I am not in town. I don't have to be here, but I'm not there.
So two of us wouldn't be here.
All right, well, let's do this. Let me go back to the committee and talk a little bit more about this. Dr. Diriker is not going to be available he's on sabbatical in November. So this will push him out to December, which may not be a bad idea. That gives me a time to plan and to make arrangements. So if it's all right with you, I'll go back to the committee and just say, hey, let's try to schedule something for December. And make it during one of our regularly scheduled meetings, either work session or meeting. He prefers a work session just because he doesn't want to get into a formal environment.
Okay,
You have
I stand corrected.
Oh, yeah,
Changed.
Yeah, I didn't have that.
Okay, I'm showing the second, Wednesday.
Wednesday the 2nd.
that's what I thought, it was Wednesday.
Oh, he said the 5th.
He said the fifth.
He said the 5th.
Dan did.
I did.
The work session is the second.
I'll be
I
there.
s- Anyhow, it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. I mean,
Still has to move to the evening if we're gonna do
yeah,
it.
it's a short fuse request. On reflection, it would probably be wiser just to schedule it delay until December and put it into that work session.
Let's schedule it at a later time when we get, already there. Yeah, okay, thank you. Put that up there. Okay, general manager's report, Mr. Thompson.
All right, I'm going to try to be brief today, make my best effort. I know we have a lot to cover. Let's first talk about, we had our board orientation. I thought the meetings went real well. I appreciate everyone who attended. There's been a lot of questions about it, a lot of assumptions out there. So I thought I'd just let everyone know, for those who didn't attend, some of the things that we covered, and for those of you who had to jump in and out. Day one, we went through the overview, including responsibilities, both of the staff, myself, the board responsibility. We had legal counsel come in and go over all of our governing documents. We had TGM, Trice Gary, Myers come in, and they went over the audit side of the house, and then we had our assistant treasurer come in and go over financials to include all our financial statements, reserves, and then we opened it up and had some just open discussion. Day two began with departmental overviews, expectations, communications, and conduct amongst the team. After that, we actually took the directors that could continue with the rest of the afternoon, and we toured all of the campuses and the majority of our facilities. So I appreciate everyone attending that. One of the things that came up was the off-site, on-site. Joe Moore clarified we certainly could do that. Secondly, it came up that we're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on it. The actual number we spent on the meeting space to include all the meals and refreshments was $1,326. Now, that does not include the attorney's fees for the couple hours Joe was with us, but those fees will have been the same no matter which venue we were in. Additionally, meals and refreshments we typically provide when we do those two-day work sessions years ago. We haven't done them in the last 2 or 3 years, so they would not have been abnormal. So I just thought I'd go ahead and clarify for folks where we stood on that. Yes, sir.
I don't think he clarified. I think he fell on his sword and took the blame if we had the meeting off-site. Because our bylaws do state that whenever possible, board meetings will be held in the subdivision. And he said that he had given you the advice that we could hold it there.
He did give us the advice we could hold it there, correct. Okay, some additional notes. I'm going to go over some notes that I wrote down today. They aren't on the slides. Again, I was trying to be brief. Some positive things that are going on right now. We booked almost $210,000 worth of banquet business, either banquet and or wedding type of business in the new yacht club facility. I went back and looked at the last 3 or 4 years of comparison. This year, which would be 13-14, we did it's 115,000. 12-13 was 210. 11-12 was 312. 10-11 was 298. I just give you those numbers because we don't have a facility there, and we already have 210,000 booked. That's a very positive sign for the new facility. CPI, we have a new work order system that's in place. We're updating it. If you recall, we talked a little bit at the work session. We're migrating between our existing cardiograph system and the new off-the-shelf system, which is a little more, it's a global system for us. That will operate simultaneously towards the end of the year, and by the first of the year, we'll convert off the cardiograph and completely on the new system. So that's underway. As far as pools are concerned, all of the outdoor pools have been closed and winterized with the exception of swim and racket. That will close this weekend on Sunday, and then it will be closed and winterized. Yacht Club, construction, off-season dining and baking. With the construction's underway, and we're going to cover some of that. Off-season dining we need to talk about. And then banquet coordinator ad starts this week. We have someone filling that role right now. One of the things that we said when we started working with the current coordinator was she was in a position to do that, but we were going to explore options. Obviously, she has a leg up. She's doing a pretty good job for us, but we just want to make sure moving into the new facility that we've explored all options on that. Recreation and Parks, right here, we have 2 new hires. Those that may not know, Eric Armstrong left. He moved back to New Jersey, except they have a pretty good position up there. And Derek, who used to work at Rankin Parks, actually accepted a position at MBS. Both had good upgrade, good family moves for them. So we're real excited about it.
Yes, so who's the point person on your banquet coordinator?
Who's the point, like, who's
What,
going to be
you
the hiring?
Yeah.
David will.
Okay. All right.
myself, and we'll usually get the resumes at the main office. David will get the first look at them, and then a couple of us will end up interviewing the person.
Okay.
Okay, police department, we have promotion, Leo Ersman, sergeant to lieutenant, good, big promotion for him, big difference in our department right now. Part of the change was a little bit of a reorganization with the way we're managing the departmental responsibilities. You have a senior officer, one of the lieutenants or the chief are on duty every night. So it's a nice switch. They're rotating around, so each of them are covering a couple nights a week. So that's working out to give us a little more senior team members during the night shifts. And we're focusing on some goals there. So that's going to be a real good bump for us. We're starting the budget process. We've already started with the departments, talk about where they are. Obviously, the guidance will come from the board shortly. Public Works, drainage work orders are down. I don't know if you noticed, they're cutting some of the ditches that we don't get to early because they just don't hold a whole lot of water. They're clearing those now. And if you bought track our work orders, they're way down on the drainage side of the house. We've started to catch up now that the weather's slow, the grass isn't growing as fast. We've been doing some catch up there. Landscape leaf collection. If you all know, every year we go through the big leaf collection. That starts around the Thanksgiving time, right after Thanksgiving time frame. We'll keep everyone updated. We are going to lease the truck promotion at the trash truck promotion city again. We've done that for several years now, and that's been a very, very good move for us. They treat us very well. We maintain the truck while we have it. New stop signs have been going up. Someone had called in. There were some concerns that the alert siren on Sandy Hook on the tower was out. Actually had a fuse with a circuit problem. Got that corrected, so that now works. I didn't run it every day for a week so everyone knew it was working. Folks living there would not have appreciated it much, but it is working. We did test it. Golf is up a little bit right now. Greens are good. Hingham Lane approval, we just got the approval we needed to get the project started. Just received that yesterday. So they're gearing up to get started on the work on Hingham Lane. The estimated start time was around the 20th, so we're pretty close to that right now. It's just a matter of when they can get crews scheduled in to get that work started. So that's on target. One thing with the golf...
What's the completion estimate on that? How many
Once
weeks?
the work begins, 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
We're hoping the work will begin next Monday or Tuesday, so it'll be 2 weeks from there. That's the last critical piece of that whole process we put together to improve the drainage.
That's all the huge pipe that's sitting up there now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Microphone.
Excuse me. When did you say that would be complete?
2 weeks once we start. We're hoping to have the work started next week. Some of the other, one thing that I'm going to ask the board about, John and I were talking about, John Malinowski from Golf yesterday, something that's come up. We have a lot more people walking, riding their bikes, walking their dogs on the golf course. It's becoming problematic because they're doing it all times of the day. And that's more of a policy decision. I mean, obviously it's a dangerous situation. They encourage people not to be walking on the course, but the board's going to have to give some guidance whether that's acceptable or not. Some recommendations, either we don't allow it or we allow it, prior to 7 a.m. and after 6 p.m. when the majority of the golf, you don't do it in the middle of the day, the majority of the golf. Yes, sir.
We need a motion. It's never been allowed. It's never.
I need guidance from the
Not
board.
allowed on any golf course in the world.
Marty, I was going to ask another question that goes to the same point, and that's that, as I recall, every public access to the golf course, except through the clubhouse and the backdrop area itself, is very clearly marked. Trespassing not allowed, restricted to registered golfers only on each one of those each one of those paths. We should therefore be simply enforcing it, which we don't do right
Some of the marshals have tried to enforce it, encouraging people not to do it, and a week and a half ago, one was very aggressively poked in the chest saying, we live here, we're allowed to do it, we pay for it, we don't golf, but we're going to walk this course.
Should have been introduced to one of his policemen that he has.
I just
The
need
fact
to,
is, it's not a matter of policy. The policy is clear. Is there anybody here not clear on the policy? It's enforcement. Let's enforce it.
so, board's comfortable, no one's allowed to walk or ride their bike on the golf.
I
just
would be
need to
very
know.
uncomfortable with any other decision. I mean, that's life-threatening.
I'm good with it, and our golf folks are good with it, I don't want to make.
Okay, I'm going to do the same thing we did the work session that we had and the training session. Remember the old comment of when we beat a horse to death, we're going to stop?
Yes.
I hear no one up here saying anything different than go enforce the rules.
Fair enough.
So go enforce the rules. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, let's talk about by the numbers. Unaudited quarterly reports. Okay, let's try the lighting. Just want to see if the lights, you can see it a little better. No?
That one, yeah.
That was probably the best.
Okay.
It's either my eyes or the focus, I'm not sure which. It could be a little of both.
I hope it's your eyes, but I'll move up so I can see. May, June, July, this is our quarterly report. Things are plugging right along. Some of the things that we've had some issues with that affect this are through our amenities. If you recall, memberships are down, aquatics in particular. When we had one of our major amenities, the yacht club pool's been closed, so instead of memberships, folks elected not to renew those. And what they did was do the daily fee when we did get it open. Also, if you recall, early summer, we had weather conditions. We had more rain this year than we had in previous years. It impacted the beach club and it impacted between the beach club, the pools, obviously, if the conditions aren't good, people aren't using the pools. And then the yacht club, the ongoing conditions we had throughout the summer between the breakdowns, some of the things, the closings. If you all recall, one Saturday night, we had over 110 bookings for a main event there. It got closed. We had ongoing issues all affecting where I think the budget numbers are for the end of the quarter. And then obviously the construction on both sides of the yacht club did not help us there either. And the last component on there where we usually do well, and we're seeing a rebound this month, but the marina sales in the May, June timeframe, particularly in May, early season, when we typically have a lot of sales coming out gate, we just didn't have them because our marina was shut down. All those.
Is the marina on there? I don't see
Yeah,
it.
marina actually falls under Rec and Park.
Thank you. Okay.
Go back to the police, public safety number.
Police, fire.
Yeah, well, public safety. I'm not understanding
Well, we budget for a loss every year.
it. Right.
We don't have as much of a loss. We budgeted for 503, we're at 485, so it's a positive variance to the budget.
Okay.
Some of that's we're short, a couple of police officers, we're running a little short on shifts. A couple of things like that are impacting where we're spending less in the department right now.
So we haven't proactively cut back, we just need to
We
hire.
proactively cut back every day. I mean, I can't.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Now, year-to-date figures change a little bit, obviously, as the year fleshes out. We think we have some areas where we'll recover some. Spring, we're hoping to pick up some of the package play as an example in golf. And then the other areas, as we manage towards the budget, the latter part, obviously, the admin, public works, public safety, recs, we usually get to recapture some of that. We also think we'll have a strong April for the marina with the new building coming online. So we have a number of things happening there where we think we'll chip away a little bit.
Already
Will
done.
you give us a copy of this?
Sure.
now, you're looking at a golf variance of 62.
Budget 150, projected 212.
Overall 74.
That's two interesting numbers at the bottom of that. This is projected through the year, the end of the fiscal year.
Yes.
You're forecasting a net actual positive $5,000, but a variance from budget of a negative 74,442.
Correct. We've been pretty close to hitting what our forecasted numbers have been. Last October, we had forecasted a big loss due to the golf operations, and we pretty much hit where we thought we would. All the rest fell in line.
Jed?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, have you talked to John? Has he said anything about packages coming in September, October? Any indication of where that's going?
There is some indication. Yeah, good question. We're seeing some positive. Our rounds are up from the projected numbers. However, we're slightly down right now, so our expenses are a little bit up because we're doing some more advertising. We're getting pretty aggressive. One of the things that we talked about was needing to get a little more aggressive so we capture more of that spring, which is the big part of the golf season. You need to spend money now with the packagers. So we have a combination. The rounds and revenues are up. Expenses are only slightly up. So I think we're going to see a positive finish for the fall for golf.
Any other questions? All right.
Country Club, I was asked last month to put some information together for operations off-season at the Country Club. Yes, sir. Okay, well, I just handed to you, and it's not on the slides. We're trying to tie all these up this afternoon. Yep. Okay, page 1. Estimated, look at the top page, estimated with CC closed. This is where we are based on our personnel we carried through the season, based on utilities, the other items that they're inclusive, that our carrying costs we typically have. Page 2 are the estimated costs if we remain open. If you notice, just for the folks, because it's not on the screen, we're estimated losses in November of 11,000, December of 11, January of 12, February of 10, and March of 7. If you look at the next page, these are the items that we're recommending moving from the Yacht Club storage. If you recall, we talked about moving equipment over to get the second floor kitchen functional. These are the items that we're recommending moving. It's going to require, obviously, some labor, but that would be internal labor numbers, as well as some equipment when we modify some of the components when we mount them in there. So there's your cost. And the last piece I gave you, the last 2 pages, just as a frame of reference, were the Yacht Club and the Country Club. And you'll notice I highlighted them in yellow. They're where our numbers actually November through March for the last 3 years were. Now, one thing that I will express to you, we're looking at taking over, there's 3 weeks in November for what we're saying for the Country Club instead of a month. So the numbers for November and March in the last 2 pages I gave you, the previous years, include the full month, which obviously are not in the cover page. Now, with that being said, what I tried to do is provide you an estimate of what the cost would be to operate, whether we operate or close. We're going to be in the red, utilities, some other things that are carried with that. So it comes down, the decision becomes, if it's a purely business decision, straight business, the recommendation is going to be to close the facility. Cut our losses and be done with it, open back up in the spring.
Hey, hold on a second. I'm going to make sure I can understand what we're looking at here. The last page of the package you gave us is the Yacht Club, no, it's the Country Club, Turn Grill. I'm looking at December, bottom of the page, 2012-13. I see a number of 1786 being a negative number. Right? You highlighted it.
You're talking Turn Grill?
December, Turn Grill.
All the way down to the bottom.
All the way down to the bottom.
Mhm.
Says Country Club / Turn Grill.
1786?
Net operating 1786.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That was last year with it open.
Correct.
Okay. But now the projection for December for next year is to lose $10,000.
10,909.
What is different between being open last year and this year that would allow it to make us lose $8,000 more?
Well, I'm going to ask a question because it might partially answer. There seems to be, maybe I'm not reading it correctly, a huge difference in payroll.
Yeah, here you go.
There's a huge difference in payroll.
So the secret society.
Yes.
Do we know why? I mean, is it
We
more
do.
people?
No, I can tell you why. If you recall, we had two facilities with some carrying cost on both facilities. We've combined, and if you look at November or look at December, you have to look at both of those facilities for previous years. We don't have both operational this year. We put it all into the one facility that's operational. So if you looked at December, okay, you follow me?
All right, let me.
We have carrying cost, well, we have, previous years, we have carrying costs for both facilities, right?
So you would see payroll for Yacht Club and payroll for Turn Grill. This year, we don't have a Yacht Club.
It all goes
So
to
Yacht
one.
Club's payroll is now going to be included into Turn Grills.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct?
That is absolutely
Okay,
correct.
I didn't have this. Okay. Got it. Did that help, Tom?
That makes sense, but
Oh,
okay.
no, wait a minute, let's make sure we understand. Yacht Club has a $25,000 loss last December, correct?
Yes.
Add that to a 1786 loss. That's your total loss for food and beverage operations in December of last year.
Yacht Club is gone.
Correct, and that's why if you compare $30,000 plus to our projection of 8 or the projection of 11, we're actually losing less. We only have one facility. We're combining our resources, and we don't have double carry on some of the positions. So it is lower than the combined elements previous years, but we're still taking a loss.
May I ask a question, please, Bob? On the top sheet with the country club closed, looking at the month of December for 4 weeks, you're looking at a payroll of $5,200. And then if the yacht club was open, the country club was open, you're looking at a payroll of $9,200.
Yes, ma'am.
So even if it was closed, we still have payroll. Because
We still have year,
people on
yeah,
there.
we have a
So
couple
is
year
it,
round.
okay. So we're looking at a cost of approximately $7,800 for the month of December with it closed, and a cost of approximately $11,000 the month of December with it open.
That's correct.
And of course, those numbers could change up or down depending on volume of sales, and
Correct.
et cetera. Okay. I got it now. Thank you.
The net difference between these things is that the top page, which is the overhead carryover of the yacht club, even if everything is closed, I'm just looking at December again, is 8766. Can everybody hear me? 8766. The number, if Turns Grill is open, is 10,956. So the actual net difference between keeping the Turns Grill open or the country club open or not for the month of December is $3,000,
Correct.
right?
That's what I was just saying.
That's really the difference here. The difference is not, because we're going to have the yacht club overhead no matter what we do.
Closer to 4 times.
Well, it's 3,100.
Ma'am, may I?
Yeah.
It's simple. This is saying we're going to spend $8,000 in order, the change between close and open is about 14,000 more. If we close up, we'll save 14,000 and 8,000 in moving equipment. I mean, it's just not a deal killer.
Yeah, it's really not, that's just human tone.
I mean, it's not, and we don't, I mean, this is all guessing. You know, last year, the yacht club closed sort of abruptly. Nobody really, I mean, Charlie and those guys over at the country club really sort of in scramble mode. They all of a sudden invented menus, and it worked pretty good. I mean, maybe with a little bit of a startup and some support, it might do better than these numbers.
Our hope that would, but we try to be conservative with our numbers to be as realistic. But you all know, if no one shows, you know, we've spent this money. We're thinking we can chip away at it a little bit. These are our best guesses based on previous years. Our conditions are very different this year.
I also don't see your heating, I don't see your utility costs going up by tenfold.
With it open or closed?
Yeah, I mean, this
They don't-
says tenfold. It says that closed are gas and electric gonna be $300, open it's gonna be 3,000.
You know that building's not very efficient, and you're gonna have people.
It's not very efficient, open or closed. You still gotta keep it heated or pipes freeze.
Right, but you can heat it at 55 degrees.
I don't think it'll be that much, that's all.
It may not be, and that's fine. We try to be conservative with our estimates.
I appreciate the numbers here, Bob. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, quite honestly. And the other factor that I think is very important is that a lot of the people in Ocean Pines have been contacting me, and I think contacting our board members. They want a place to meet. Overwhelmingly, the emails I've received this past week have been definitely, let's have a place to meet for Ocean Pines people. If it costs us $3,000 a month, and that's a maybe. It could be more, it could be less. But it's a good guesstimate, and for $3,000 for our people, I think, that's a no-brainer to me. I think it's fine.
I'll bet it's cheaper than the community hall.
Okay,
Question?
Yeah.
Question?
Bill, go ahead.
I was there throughout the whole year last year. I was, in the group that goes there. The Turn Grill people did a fabulous job with throwing something together at the last minute. Did they progress along? Yes, they progressed along, and it went from like 30 people to 170, 180 people. Now, they are the same folks that would go from there over to the yacht club. There are folks out there, and there are even ones that wouldn't come to the country club because they think it's a country club and they're not allowed. But the word started getting out, and more and more and more people. The park brought a big group in. We need something for people to gather and do something. Not to mention, we've discussed this before. Bereavements on a couple days' notice. Parties. We need something for the people of Ocean Pines to be able to come to on the weekends. It doesn't have to be all week, all week long. That's when you get into the utilities or just going out the roof and all that kind of stuff. We need something at the country club, whatever form it takes. But we do need something on the weekends for people to be able to gather and socialize.
And
I have received numerous emails from folks in favor of this, and I shared with the board my answers, but the public hasn't seen them. My answer across the board has been, I'm well known for wanting the amenities to be open for folks to use. I also was very clear that the pricing model for this year's chicken might not be able to match the pricing model of last year's, but at the same time, I think we ought to be, if not, I said we would see the numbers. We've now seen the numbers, and I don't think they're
If I
world
can share
killer
the
at
hours
all.
of operation
Yeah,
that we're going to
once
propose,
you do
it may
that.
help you all with the decision.
Yeah.
We're looking at Friday night, okay, something late afternoon. Saturday around 10 till closed dinner, whatever dinner ends up being, 8, 9 o'clock. Sunday, 10 till whenever the last football game is. And then Monday night, only for the football package. So we're limiting our time. Now, that will also include a very, very limited menu. There's no way we're going to be all things to all people, but we're going to try to do items, obviously, around the football games. We'll try to encourage, that type of food, but Friday night we'll try to do a meal or two as a special. We won't be able to run a full operating, we're really scaled down to run very lean this year.
Okay. Well, Dan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I've got one observation and a couple of common questions, actually. Just by looking at your two models, net profit and loss, the yellow highlighted at the bottom of each one,
Yes, sir.
you're looking at essentially round figures, $15,000 to be built versus what it was. That's about the difference between the two
Yes,
over that period of
that's
time.
correct.
Is there, question number one, going to be any sort of golfer support, food and beverage wise during that period?
Yes, part of what we looked at was, that's why I said 10 o'clock on Saturdays and Sundays. That's when during the weekends is when you're going to have your the majority of your golfers, your packages, those type things, any that are left over as the weather holds, are majority weekends. That's why we're opening earlier those days to support that. Not during the week, though.
So there wouldn't be, there would be nothing available to golfers during the week? in
No,
terms
sir.
of food and beverage support.
There would not be.
All right, and the second question is probably more difficult to answer. We have a food and beverage director and a essentially non-existent staff at this point in time who sometime next spring are going to open up $4.3 million worth of new facility. Is there any training or organizational benefit behind keeping the country club open during this period of time to let them start to get their feet on the ground? Or do you feel that there's no tie-in at all?
Ooh, you can see that last piece. If it's open, there is some opportunity there. It's somewhat limited, though. Facility won't be the same.
Got that.
One of the things we're looking at that's not on here, but we can do it internally, is moving 3 of the Micros computers over, so we can do some programming, some training on that. But keep in mind, the majority of our staff doesn't actually come until late May, early June. We don't start to get busy until then, with the exception of the banquet business, event business that we're starting to book. And this would give us some opportunity to do a little bit of training there. I just want to dispel the fact that it's not a training site per se. But yes, if we have staff there, we'll be able to meet with clients that want to do banquets, events, and we'll also be able to provide some training of some of the kids that come back from college that want to work as wait staff. Will obviously be able to come in, get some early training, those type of things. Yes.
Well, we also have some David is going to be faced with staff development, and frankly, just based on personal experience, we've got staff over at Turner's Grill and the Country Club right now who are really valuable, but it would be a shame to lose, and I'll just leave that one at that point. But to me, that's a fairly good reason for looking at this $15,000 and saying it's a very affordable investment.
The one thing that I'll say to that, I did not tell David who we would have to or not have to hire. I'm assuming he is a professional who's going to make that
I
decision.
understand that.
He needs to evaluate his staff. He needs to decide if he wants to bring anybody from the yacht club or keep people from the country club. And quite frankly, with his experience and background, I'd rather him make that decision than me, because I think he's going to be better qualified to do it. He's looking when he was developing the numbers, he and Art, they're looking at cost of goods sold, cost of the food. They're looking at the beverage, food and beverage side, both on how much the cost is versus what the sales are. He's really spent the last couple of weeks analyzing that.
Eric?
Just one question. The equipment that you're moving,
Yes,
that stays there?
it would be my intent to leave it there, yes.
Marty, do you have your hand up?
I just want to know what's the board need to do? You need a motion, I guess?
We would eventually, Sherry.
I just have one other quick question. Does the numbers for this country club dining go under the golf operations now, or where
Yeah.
will this be going on the budget?
Well, it will be a departmental transfer to the yacht club, because it'll be our yacht club team.
So
running.
starting the November 1st or whatever time
November
we
1st,
open, it
November-
will come under the yacht club?
Correct.
Okay, I'm
Because
just...
Casper's recommendation to us is closed, and they're trying to manage the numbers tight. So using that and using the fact that we have staff that we're paying anyway year-round, it makes sense just to absorb that.
That's fine, I just needed...
Any more questions?
I forgot, this was the other part. Has the yearly inspection been done on that building yet? You know how yearly you go and have it looked at, and like you did the yacht club? You know how you inspected it yearly? Is it like due anytime soon, or is it?
When we go through them and identify, that's being done with all our facilities right now for budgetary purposes.
So we're looking for safety concerns if there are any. Okay.
Yep. We actually have a couple people going around now, and every building's going through the full checklist. Now, I'll tell you, what's really neat this year is we're getting even more detail with the new system that Public Works has. It's very detailed on building maintenance. In addition to the fact we have a facilities manager now who's double checking it all, so we're really building part of the programming into it for long term of what our needs are going to be. And that addresses safety concerns, longevity of the HVAC system, those type of things.
Good. Bill?
Okay, I appreciate what you say about about David being professional and all that, but I think he needs to know that familiarity with the process at the Turn Grill, with what they did last year and progressing, week after week after week over there, is something that he really needs to take into consideration for us to have any shot at success.
All right, the question has been put forward, what do we need to do? I think at this point, the board of directors would need to either authorize or not authorize this facility being left open with the budgetary changes, basically moving it to the yacht club reporting site in our books. And does someone want to make that motion? Jack?
So moved. I make the motion to authorize, I guess, Bob Thompson and the necessary staff to open the Golf Country Club for the period designated, which is November, December, January, February, and March.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, any further discussion? I don't think we need to get specific, except we've already said what the days of the week were and what you were going to do. So it's in the record of what you said you were
Tom,
going to
do me a favor, vote to have people come. We need the
We
business.
vote that everybody comes.
If everybody that sent a letter buys one
That's
year.
right. That's right.
That's right. All the emails we got.
Okay. All right, I don't think if there's any more discussion on this. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. And I reinforce the marketing. Everybody who sent us an email has to eat there at least 3 times.
That's right.
Thank you. Yes.
All joking aside, this has been thank you, Bob. There was a lot of work putting that together that fast. Okay, keep going.
Okay, projects, just give you a couple quick updates on the project. Sports court pool, if you remember, we're looking at the decking, looking at the pool shell itself. Here's where we are. RFP went out. Pool proposals have been received, replacing, and we put it in kind of some snapshot components to keep it short. Replace the skimmers. The range from the proposals that came in were between $13,200 and $15,000. Replace the coping stones, ended up between $10,000 and $12,000. Replace the pool tile and markers was ranged between $10,000 and $19,000. And again, that range is based on the bids that came in. That was the swag between them. Reconditioned pool surface, $10,000 to $59,000, and it was based on what they felt needed to be done on the pool. Decking proposals, if you recall, this is one of the things we wanted to look closely into. Concrete work, if you remember the sports court pool, those that went on the tour with us, look down. Everywhere there's a seam, the metal that's in there is all rusting out. We've tried over the years to cover it somehow with some sort of caulking or material. So what this would actually be, company would come in and they'd grind up the concrete that's there, all of it, and they'd re-pour concrete on top. And that's where the 85-8 came. The pavers would be basically, they would do the leveling, everything with sand, and then they put pavers down. And we talked about that for those who did the tour with us. And the last thing, PVC flooring, that's the rubberized type flooring, either poured or rolled out in 12-foot sections with the seams, and then they seal the seams. So we're trying to look at multiple ways to redo that decking with the intent of improving the seams, improving the drainage the way it's supposed to flow away from the pool area. So they're all part of. Now, what we're going to do with this information is we're going to apply it into, we're going to incorporate it into the CIP that we've been working on.
Okay.
Okay?
Will any of this be in the budget for next year?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we'll put it in. The board decides if
But
it's
true, it's just you're going to be presented. That's not what I want.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's based on the advisory committee's recommendations that we roll over one job. So
Correct. Correct. At Dan's point, Aquatics recommended tying it all into one job, and that's why we're getting all the pieces now. And we'll talk with them, obviously, over the bids and let them get a look at it, and we'll hopefully make a good, sound decision there.
Is it gonna make it?
What's
Is
that?
it gonna be all right? Is that pool gonna operate until that all gets done?
Yes. Stormwater management, this one's been a hot topic. If you remember, we're looking at drainage a number of different ways. This one's been interesting. If you recall, we've been very aggressive in trying to make the changes, the drainage, fix the drainage, we do the repairs where we're putting a lot of the spread, where the entrance to the drains are, we're putting the metal so it opens it up so the ends aren't crushed. So a lot of in-house things we've been doing. In addition to that, one of the recommendations we made was consider going out to other companies and get some ideas of what else we should be looking at. And we started with Section 3 because that's where Section 3 impacts this whole area, where it backs up the most, even with light rains. We ended up with 4 proposals, Stormwater Maintenance and Consulting, Davis, Bowen, and Fidel, URS, George, Miles, and Burr, our GMB out of Salisbury. In addition to that one, which is down 2 bullets, we also had and Marty had pointed this out, the Soule work that had been done over the years. Also talked to Steve Soule, and he followed up. He didn't submit a proposal. What he did was send a couple-page letter directing us to some of his previous work of recommendations he had. So what we're doing is now the approximate range between all of those proposals we're looking at was between $30,000 and $80,000 all in. We're evaluating those. We're doing them like we do when we get the others in. We kind of do a spreadsheet because everyone approaches it a little bit different. We need to make sure we have apples to apples. We're going to review that. We're going to overlay that with Soule's work as well. And then we're going to bring recommendations back to you at the latest by next board meeting. We're trying to have it by the next working session, just so you have time to look at it and digest it a little bit. Okay, so we're staying pretty aggressive with the drainage side of the house.
what is our overall objective of this? Do you intend to move before the new budget is put into place? That's going to be this year, or are we going to wait?
Let me wait till I get all my final numbers.
I
We need
wanted
to
you to
figure-
make a commitment. before
Yeah,
you-
no commitment. Let's find out when you're looking at a range of $30,000 to $80,000,
Yeah.
it's a pretty wide range. Where we might be able to pick up some of that somewhere else in the budget we don't spend on is one question. Now, keep in mind, this is for the study and the recommendations. This doesn't even mean the work being completed. And that's what we're trying to level. So we need to make sure when we come back to you, if we say, look, our recommendations spend $50,000 for the study, following that study, we're then going to have our plan to attack the drainage issues per an engineering report. That's going to be up to you all. We may come back and say, look, we went back and reviewed all the Soule information, and this is what, based on everything we received, this is where we'd like to go. And that's what we're analyzing now.
I think Marty's right about that. I think you would be surprised at how much work Steve Soule has already done.
Oh, I'm not surprised. I met with him a couple times since these have been out. He's got a lot of good information out there. We've just never taken full action on it.
Right.
Okay? Bridges, just a quick update. RFP was released in July. Clubhouse Drive and Ocean Parkway. Proposed categories was basically construction documents, permitting, and help us oversee the construction. Proposals came back in from these 3 companies. We are evaluating those. I should have pulled recommendation out. We had put that in the slide, but we found something that we want to take another look at before we bring that recommendation to you. So our intent is to come back next month when we can provide you the studies and the squared up recommendation of what we want to go with.
Is this the kind of, well, it's been quite a while anyway, but I'm assuming would we be better off getting a special meeting if need be to look at this, or is this?
Maybe, but since you're doing 2 meetings with me a month, I don't need any more special meetings.
Now,
You want me to be honest, right? I mean,
Fair enough,
is this
yeah.
our total amount that we are responsible for, or is this the total amount to have the work done? Because I know the county's picking up part of it.
no, for repair work, it's ours. If
For repair work, it's
If it's
ours,
a
okay.
replacement, it's a split.
Okay.
And that's why we're really trying to make sure we get this right, because it does impact us directly or some cost sharing. Again, if you remember, we went over this 6 months ago where we talked about the ratings on the bridge. We've really gotten a lot smarter, we being Jerry, on the bridges and what the ratings are. See that, right, Jerry?
Hey, Jerry, you just said you were really
Well
smart.
said.
Now, listen.
Say, yes, sir.
Jerry is
I
smart.
told him. Good. No, but we've really gotten a lot smarter on the bridges and trying to understand what all the reports mean and now how we can address getting that work.
Right.
Yes,
I had mentioned in an email to you, I think we got off track on it for a bit, but it's the bridge on the Parkway at the entrance to the Border Lakes.
Bridge on the Parkway to Port
It was
Orleans.
one of the two we're talking about here. It's
Yes.
not the one going down the country club. It's the one on the Parkway. The recommendation in the most recent state county report was replace it. It said it needed to be replaced.
Okay?
And that was their recommendation, replace the bridge. Pretty,
The recommendation can be to replace it, but I believe the BSR, which is the sustainment ratio, was still about 60, 62, and we don't qualify for the reimbursement funds, so it drops to a 50.
that was my question. Because to replace it for us, if we're paying an 80-20 split, was cheaper than maintaining it.
Yes. You're right.
You answered my question. We don't qualify to replace it, rock and roll. Thank you.
That's where we've gotten smarter on it. He's gotten smarter. Okay?
Did everybody hear Jerry's answer on that? I mean, seriously, did you hear it or not? Okay. Speak up and explain what just went on.
I don't think the gentleman in the back would. Did you understand it, sir?
No, the couple of them said they couldn't, so go ahead.
The issue is whether or not replacing the bridges to qualify for reimbursement from the state. What is actually a state reimbursement program that actually, after we pay to rebuild the bridge, we then file the paperwork and they'll reimburse us 80% of the cost. In order to qualify for that program, they have what they call a BSR rating, which means Bridge Sustainment Ratio, which is a calculation of all the things they do, and they come out with a number. That number has to be below 50. Currently, our worst bridge is 01, the clubhouse. That is, I believe, around 52. That's very close. The Parkway Bridge, I believe, is around 60. The other two bridges are around 70, 72. So, Marty's point, it makes sense to put a little bit of investment in these bridges, and we can gain a number of years before they have to be replaced.
Thank you. Also, if our score was lower, we would have gotten more money.
Correct.
But we're not eligible because our score wasn't low enough.
Correct.
Where was that program when I was in school? Okay, keep going.
All right, yacht club, hot topic. Let's try to get through this as painlessly as possible. Accomplishments. Thus far, swimming pool and deck. All work is complete. Pool operational for 30 days from 8/8 to 9/8. Pool was winterized to include the new pool cover. September 10th and 11th is when they installed that. Looks really, really good out there, too. If you haven't seen the pool cover, it turned out very, very nice. If you look at it from the fence, you'll also notice that there's some tarps and tires there around it. That won't be the ongoing. That's just right now while construction's happening. Just in case there's any additional debris or anything that falls into that center section, we want to make sure it was covered up, and Harkins actually took care of that. Phase two, part one for the new building. Old building is demoed. The intent is to have it complete by the end of this week. If you haven't gone and look at our website, we've been trying to update the pictures, but it's pretty phenomenal for those of you that went with me Friday and looked at it. Very, very different, kind of a mixed feeling, mixed bag on that. Permit for the building showing utilities issued. Foundation had to be modified to accommodate the soil quality issues, and completed the underground rough ends and mechanicals. That should all be complete by the end of the week. What that entails is not only utilities like electric, but running the PVC piping where they're going to have the pull strings for the wiring and additional items that need to run through those before they pour the slab on top of them. So all that's being put together now. Future work, week of September 23rd, the intent is to begin pouring for the new pad. That's when things will really start to take off. At the same time, the final pieces of getting the construction out, by the time they get to the corner where they have the additional pour from the corner of the club that's there now, Fisher Marine should have the final pilings knocked into the ground. So therefore, that pour will just be continuous all the way to that other corner. October 1st, framing should
Before you
begin.
go on, Angel, let's make sure I'm aware of why we had to put pilings in, but, you know, we did core drillings, but we couldn't do them where existing buildings were. Take a couple minutes to make sure people understand how we ended up having to do this.
Sure. If you recall, we talked about at the last board meeting, June board meeting, we talked a little bit about that we're going to start the foundation work, which was supposed to be a spread footer system. The challenges, once they got in, they started to find some soil content when they did some additional testing. The compaction ratio in the soil wasn't, it didn't have enough PSI to do it over a spread footer. They decided they needed to put pilings in to make sure we had good, secure foundation. So the next step was, and the reason they didn't catch it early, they had soil samples that had been accomplished earlier. There were 4 of them, I believe, 4 or 5, I don't remember the exact number, that had been accomplished. But if you recall, we had structures in that same area. Things like the Marina building was sitting on part of where the foundation would be. So until that was moved, you couldn't do any soil sampling under it, obviously. Some of the equipment, some of the HVAC equipment, where the dumpsters were, all those are all part and parcel where the new foundation is. So until that stuff was moved, you couldn't really get under it to do a good core sample. Once they started the core samples, they found that we just did not have the quality of soil they needed for the structure, and that's when the piling worked, the alternative. There were several alternatives considered. Piling work seemed like the most, that's what the engineer had recommended. We talked to the county about it. County had agreed to that. There were several back and forth. I want to tell you it was Paul Miller, but I don't want to mistake that. The gentleman at the county was working close with Harkins and with AWB. AWB, if you recall, is the engineering firm that works for Harkins. All that work was being accomplished in the late June or early July time frame. It was decided that the foundation plan using the pilings was the right plan. Fisher Marine, who has done the majority of our bulkhead work over the last few years, actually was able to step up and do the piling work not only quickly, but we felt cost effective. We already have a relationship with them, so we felt comfortable with what they were doing. They only had one piece of equipment they had to move in. They weren't sure how deep they'd have to drive the pilings until you got the compression ratio where it needed to be. Could be 30 feet deep, could be 12 to 15 feet. We were fortunate most of them were in the 12 to 15 foot range. They started to put the pilings in. Instead of just doing the water side, they ended up coming around a little further than they anticipated based on soil conditions. So they put more pilings in, but they weren't quite as deep. And until we knew all that, we didn't know what the final costs were going to be on it. That help?
Any questions on it?
There was
And
no
I'm going to go into that a little more.
no bidding involved, as Fisher was there and on site.
Well, it's Harkins. It's under the Harkins contract, so no, it wasn't
It
bidding.
wasn't at that point.
You're going to differ in where we are on it. I'm telling you, Harkins, we engaged with Harkins to handle that. They did it.
We had a
didn't
signed
bid.
change order with Harkins.
We do not have a signed change order yet.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, how the project went, and then we're going to get into the change orders. There's been a question about how the project has been managed. There seems to be some question mark there, so we just thought we'd break it down. Construction is managed by the Harkins team. Turnkey operation, we engaged, if you recall, we went out to RFP. We felt Harkins provided the best option for us for a full turnkey between Harkins, the fact they engaged with an outside engineering firm, which was AWB. Through that process, they were selected. If you recall, they were not the cheapest, but they seemed like they give us the full turnkey operation, so that's why the board elected to go in that direction. Here are the subs that they've been working with to date. Our side of the house, the oversight, myself, Jerry, our facilities manager, our public works director, Eddie, and our comptroller. We have had some outside assistance, which was greatly appreciated by some members of the association that weren't paid staff that helped us with some things like understanding the foundation work, understanding the concrete work, those type of things. And we appreciate that help because it helped us when we're going through the piling decision process. So we appreciated that. And then the collaborative work environment where we're working, we have daily site inspections by our team members, which work with the on-site Harkins folks. Randy Swift's the on-site foreman that runs the Harkins project. Either Eddie or Eddie Wells or Jerry are meeting with him on a regular basis. At a minimum, it's at least once a week with a regular scheduled meeting. And it's often daily. They're down there just checking the site to find out where we are, what's the status of it. Project oversight continues. Weekly on-site updates by the facility manager, public works director, and construction supervisor. Weekly project updates are published describing the work accomplished, work plan, and schedule of assignments. That's what goes into building the Gantt chart that we share with you. Issues impacting the schedule. If there's an issue, pilings is a great example that comes up, immediately there's a meeting scheduled between all the folks involved. What's the problem? What are the potential solutions? And then they're discussed, and then the options are kind of vetted out based on what the next steps would be. From there, it's then vetted between both teams, and then we sit down separately, we being Eddie, Jerry, myself, Art when it's appropriate, because he handles the money on it. And we look at, here's the options, here's what they're proposing, how does it fit in our contract, what percentage, how does it impact not only the big picture, but and I'm going to show you the next slide, every month they actually get a draw based on their performance, the work that's been accomplished. So we compare that, what percentage it impacts on that. Payment application is made by the 26th of each month from Harkins to us. We review it, we see what percentage of values, how it lays out against what the proposed project looks like. We look at the time, we compare it to the lost time if we've had weather conditions. We follow up our weekly meetings with their side to make sure we're on target and why something is either ahead or behind the schedule curve. And then all that gets put together and then gets sent, and I sit down and look at it again against the original contract. Art starts looking at it against the schedule that Jerry's been watching, so we have three of us looking at the numbers. Change orders, when identified, we've only had a couple of them, but they've happened to be kind of some big ones that grabbed us. Foundation footer issue with the pilings was the biggest. It was something that I brought up to the board in July. We didn't know what the numbers were going to look like yet because the compression ratio, the depth of the pilings, the extent of the number of pilings that had to go in. So all that was going through that process. Once agreed on a resolution, the intent then is to move forward. If you recall, we had 2 change orders, and 2 weeks ago, I actually went to Tom and said, look, you signed the contract, let's talk about the change orders, how we want to execute signing them. And that's when it started. Let's get with the board, figure out how we want to start moving forward with change orders. These were the first 2 big ones, with the exception of the marina move that we've had. So this is where we need to start to address these. Hence, that's where all the talk in the last 2 weeks about how this oversight was going to continue.
Yeah, and let me just step in on that one. I think it's important that we level set where we are. When the change orders that Bob presented to me, I wouldn't sign them because I had not been authorized by the board to sign them. What had happened was we had authorized Bob, and it's in a motion later to reaffirm this, but we had appointed Bob contractually to represent us with Harkin in making the decisions of what things would be done. What we had failed to put together is a change order approval process where a value would be established based on when does Bob have to come back to the board to get the approval. That process was not put in place. The fallback, of course, is the $15,000 figure. For any other unbudgeted item, Bob has to come back to us for approval for that dollar amount. So the process for change order approval, the decision process, you just had it explained. The dollar process was not established, and the work was done. So we are where we are. At this point, there is a motion later in the meeting where we will be, there's a proposal for what that level of dollar amount ought to be for Bob to be able to act on his own. But at this point, I have not signed the change orders. I have had discussions with George Harkin, who is the head of the engineering firm. His side of this is comfortable with the work that was ordered, the work that was done. He's comfortable in doing the work and has done the work. But clearly there was not a process established for the level of when Bob had to come back. He was working under the contingency dollars and the $4.3 million of the project, but the $15,000 limit is still out there. So the issue is still there for us to resolve at this point. I'll recognize you guys in a second. I'm just trying to level set people how we got where we are in my view. Okay, whose hand went up first?
Mine.
Jack.
Yeah, I'm the new guy, so I have to be educated here. Now, when this came to light, albeit there was no given process as to how to handle a change order, who gets communicated to? Are you called, Tom? And is this discussed with you openly about, we have a problem with soil integrity, and that soil integrity has to be replaced by pilings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How does?
Well, actually,
how do we get to a point where it's comfortable to pay this change order? How does that occur?
Well, the way that one happened, the board was actually advised by Bob that work had to be done, but it was not approved. In that sense,
So
the process wasn't there for me to say yes or no.
Okay, so in other words, what you're saying, what I understand you to say is that Bob went to you and to the board, and I assume that was before I was on this.
July.
This is July. Yeah, before this August group. No decision was made at the board level.
There was no request for the board to approve or disapprove the work. It was being done at that point, and the cost was not fully known yet.
Okay.
That's where it was.
Okay. Well, then how did it get paid? How did it get finalized and ultimately paid?
Well, the approval to do the work was approved by Bob as our representative under the contract, and Harkin took that as the approval. And lacking a process that we had put in place, that's what they worked on.
Well, then maybe my question should be directed toward Bob. Then, Bob, you assumed because the previous board had empowered you to, manage this particular project, that you had the ultimate authority to approve a change order over
Correct.
your normal dollar authority?
Yeah, the normal dollar authority.
It's $15,000. I got that. Yeah.
Okay.
So based upon your being designated, our representative or the board's representative at that time, manager of this project, you assumed that you had the authority to pay that change order without consultation with anybody. And I don't mean that as a setup question.
I'm going to answer. I just don't want to interrupt you. I've tried
Okay,
3
no,
times and you keep jumping, so I'm not.
Yeah,
interrupting.
I'm not trying to go after you. I'm just
I
trying
don't
to
feel that way at all.
understand
No, the question,
this
it's a
process.
good question. Here's how it was looked at. I was designated the representative for Ocean Pines by the board. Tom Terry clearly stated that. We looked at the change order, the potential issue we had with the foundation, consulted with the folks I work with on a day-to-day basis. Someone who, representative of Ocean Pines, who also has contracting work and foundation work, got input from him. And then I told the board at the July board meeting, we have an issue with the soil content. They're going to have to change the footing the spread footers with the slab foundation. They were going to have to put pilings in. I explained how we're going to have to cap the pilings. I went into detail, explained to the board that would be the step that they're planning to do. Received no objections from the board. I do look at it from a dollar amount, not to pass the contingency amount. And when we have the contingency built in, my understanding of the contingency allows for these changes up or down. Now, I'm going to show you in a couple of the change orders. There's a couple changes that we did not get, that were not passed on to us from the additions that had to be made, part of the process, that we didn't have to bear the brunt on. So yes, I watched that every day, and yes, I was under the assumption.
Well, let me summarize. In short, you felt you had the authority from the board.
Absolutely. Wouldn't have done it otherwise.
Ocean Pines has been here. We just celebrated 45 years, and I keep hearing everybody say that we didn't have a policy in place. There is a written policy in place.
They said procedure.
Well, there's a written policy and procedure. In fact, it's called a policy and procedure
Okay.
manual. I mean, responsibilities. Board of Directors responsible for establishing policies, budget approval, execution of contracts, and approval of expenditures for capital improvements of $15,000 or more.
What are you reading?
I'm reading our financial management policy manual. Chapter 2, the general manager is authorized to make purchases and contracts up to $15,000, including capital purchases, for which the funds have been provided. In budget is, I guess, what they mean by that. Who signed the first change order? Let me just go over, I believe
The
that was
board.
brought to the board. The board approved it.
Change order 1 was signed by
And
the
who
board.
signed it?
Tom?
Tom Terry. Who
Change-
signed the contract?
Tom?
I did.
Whose signatures are on the change orders?
Well, one change order has been signed by me because it was for the pool and the board has
Understand
already
that.
approved.
Change order 2, change order 3. Whose signatures
Have
on
not
the
been
signature?
executed.
Whose signature, whose name? is
When
on
I
the
say they
signature?
have not been executed, that means they have not
They
been
haven't-
signed.
I know exactly what you mean.
You said who
Here's a
signed it.
copy of it. Whose name is at the bottom of the sign for Ocean
Should be
Pine?
Tom Terry.
Should be Tom Terry, pretty much so.
Whose name's on it, Marty? You're asking.
Tom Terry.
Then why are you
Why
asking the
in the world
question?
would you think that you could
Well, here-
authorize a change order, not say a word about it in meeting June or meeting July?
False.
What did you tell us about a
I-
$47,000
I-
change order?
Marty, here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to say it one more time, then I'm not going to get in a big debate. Here's what I'm going to tell you.
We're going to do what we do.
No, I brought it up in the July meeting. At that time, did not know what the numbers were.
You brought up
We did-
pilings.
Correct, we had to change.
I'm talking about change order number
We
2.
didn't have, okay, which one's 2? Oh, the change order with the
Change
marina?
order for
That was, we
$47,000.
talked about that back in May. You're talking a different one. All right, let's back up to that one. That one includes, we made 3 primary changes under that. And the board was apprised of those, we just didn't have the final numbers. One of them included the chop tank pedestals. If you recall, I brought it to the board and talked about the pedestals. We had one pedestal providing electric for the 3 elements, the marina, the yacht club, and the pool. We talked about separating those elements. We didn't have a hard cost because chop tank, what's been very interesting about the project, and this is where it gets a little gray, not by design, but we just don't have, none of the utilities are clearly marked there. Neither the county nor us have clear. If I can finish, I'll explain how, if it doesn't matter to you, I don't have to
No,
answer.
it's just that this isn't about the need to do a change order. It's about the way we do a change order and the policy that we're supposed to follow. Nobody's arguing, I haven't argued that we need these change orders. I saw at the July meeting when you said that we were,
Right.
and when I called in and found out that there were corners that were soft that might need some pilings. The fact of the matter is, I didn't realize that Fisher got a no-bid sole source contract for reasons unknown to me. This stuff needs to be brought to the board to decide, and that's clear. There's no need for a policy. It's right and right. And by the way, it's worked pretty darn good, board, since 1998, 15
How many
years.
projects have been assigned to the general manager to run at this scope since we've started?
Building you're standing in?
No, sir. There was a team that did. It wasn't assigned to the general manager. No, sir.
Well, it certainly went well. Maybe that's the way we ought to be doing this.
Defined well. I mean, there are changes we could have done.
There wasn't one change order I'm not sure if all the change orders in this building's come up to what we've just done in this. And the,
Okay, but I'm saying, this is the first one that's been assigned to a general manager by the board. Marty, you're asking me, this is why, you mentioned 45 years, I'm giving you the answer. It hasn't,
Can somebody
so,
point me to the minutes where this assignment was made, this authority given? And voted?
Tom?
Publicly stated by me in the board meeting that I had signed the contract with Harkin and that Bob, it's in the, watch the video, it was in there that I had not, that I had appointed Bob by us to be the person to represent us by contract. I said it verbally, very publicly.
That's great, you don't have the authority to do that either.
Well, actually,
It requires-
as a signer of the contract, I do.
No, you don't, it requires a vote of the board, a motion and a vote discussion, a second
Okay,
discussion.
I'm not gonna get, we're gonna stay on topic.
Stay on top, you do what you want to do, just avoid talking about the fact that we don't have anything on policy except a policy. My apologies, we ignored the policy.
The issue is very, and I'm gonna say this statement, I'm gonna move on to the next topic, because we got a motion coming up later for the rest of us. To me, when this issue came up and the change order was put in front of me with my signature line, I looked at it and said, the board has not authorized me to sign a change order.
Amen.
Therefore, I wouldn't sign it. When the issue came up, the work was already done, or I said, what's the process for this? And normally there's a signed change order in the industry. I talked to numerous people, you being one of them, as to what the, Bill and others, as to what the process normally was. So when I said process, that's what I was talking about, is do we have a process here? It's clear that there was a assumption, and not an unreasonable one, in my opinion, that there was a contingency assigned to this project. The gentleman was named the project manager to run the project for us. He is our representative as our customer. He made an assumption that I don't disagree with, that he would have had the authority to make that decision to call for that work. You have raised the issue, justifiably, that the policy says $15,000. Therefore, we are in a situation where I fully said going into this, that process-wise, we've got to figure out what we want to do going forward on this project, where Bob's managing it. There are two assumptions made, one of which is backed up by policy, one is backed up by a provision for extra dollars put into the budget for contingency. So, the point, we got a motion coming up later about this, we'll continue this at that point.
But we're still under discussion, and I want to understand, that these change orders were put before you when?
Last week,
Do you realize,
weeks ago.
one of them was September 10th at the meeting, that's 82 days old. Look at the date on the change order, 82 days, it's dated the 20th of June.
Jack.
That's not proper management.
Well, the thing that is confusing to me, and again, I'm the new guy on the block here, but the thing that is confusing to me is, if we have a responsibility to the membership, a fiduciary responsibility to the membership, how come I gotta read in a blog or I gotta pick up a newspaper to find out about this kind of stuff? Now, maybe there may be members on this board who were really quite aware of what was evolving and what was going on, but I sure wasn't. And there's not only are we missing a system by which this process should not happen again, or this situation should not happen again, but the process should be cleaner and it should be more open. Not only are we missing that, we're missing a communication link here. I mean, I don't want to embarrass anybody on this board by saying, would those who were aware of this raise your hand at an early date? Aware of change orders floating around. You became aware of it, he's saying, on the 10th, okay? No, other than reading stuff.
Okay, let me answer your question.
Yeah.
First of all, let me state I agree with a lot of what you're saying.
Well, I don't know what
Well, we know what you're saying. We need more oversight procedures, and I totally agree with that. When you asked me when was I aware of this, I became aware of the extra work that was going to have to be done on some of these cases is when they were presented to the board. just as other board members were. In July, we heard about the pylons. Before that, we heard about the chop tank. We've heard about this work. When you asked about the specific contract language of when it was put in front of me, the actual change order contract was shown to me last week, which was 82 days after some of the work was completed. Okay? Those are the facts. Ugly or not, that's where they are, and they're ugly in some cases. And by the way, Marty, there were, just for the record, there were 16 change orders on the construction of this building.
And what was the most expensive?
Most expensive, glancing, was about $9,000, I believe, on a building that's about a fourth of the price of this new itself. Moving on.
Well, who managed it? Maybe we should call them and find out if they might be interested in doing this job.
Okay. Moving on. Bob, keep going.
Jack?
All right, I'm going to cover the other change.
Before we talk about that offline. Go ahead, Bob.
All right, I'm going to cover the other change orders just to bring everyone up to speed. Chop tank. That's where we did the 3 pedestals. You were informed of that. I told you we didn't know what the cost of chop tank couldn't give us a bid because they didn't know what they were getting into when they first started it. They ended up putting 3 separate pedestals. The new cradles, when they lifted, when they went to move the marina tanks, the cradles that were underneath, including the where the cradles actually mount to the tank, was all rusted through. No way you would have known that until you start lifting them. West Fuel Services, if you recall, we had significant delays in the March, April, May. Board was apprised of those on an ongoing basis. We had a different contractor in who just delayed the project left and right. We couldn't figure out what was going on. Had to bring another contractor in, and that's the only reason we got the marina open early June. If you recall, we're about a month behind on that. When that occurred, some additional items were identified that we didn't know about. When you go to move the tanks, and remember, the first contractor that we were engaged with, or actually Harkins was engaged with, had their scope, and their work was a lot. Moving the tanks was simple, short, sweet, boom. When we actually got, and I think that's part where the delays were coming in, it was actually a little more significant than that when you have the new state regulations. West Fuel Services are the team that came in behind that contractor. They identified things like the new type of piping we need, the polypropylene wrap pipe, special order pipe you need now for fuel docks near marinas. Wasn't what we had because we've been there forever. In addition, F-stops in the tanks. F-stops are at the top of the tank to keep it from overfilling. Things like that were occurring. Some of the regulators that had to be put on to meet the current code that we weren't made aware of. All these things came in as an afterthought to the requirements. West Fuel, who did the work, actually reduced the price on it when they did it. It was less than what the final bid or what the final other company came in with all the delays. We said we need to know what work you're accomplishing. It was just a pretty challenging time there working with Harkins, working with that contractor, and then getting to where we were. So those were absolutely shared with the board as we were going through it. If you recall, the concern was everyone was hot on it because getting the marina open, where are delays, what are the issues? So we talked that one a whole lot. The bond adjustment, one of the decisions right at the beginning of the contract, we put in with the referendum out for a bond adjustment prior to knowing which contractor we were choosing. The discussions were after the contractor was selected, it was the local contractors, all the work they did, the bond was not fully needed. That was the decision that was made. Because typically get a bond if you're worried about not performance on the job, you're worried about them leaving, they're just in town, you're worried about their financials, those type of things. We didn't have those. So we didn't have the bond requirements, so we had a positive adjustment there. So if you look at how this was the scope under that particular change order, this was the chop tank electric 3 pedestals, then this would be the marina work. This was the bond adjustment brought back down to the 47,404. Okay, and that's where I put it on here. Original contract, change order 1, that's the pool and all the work that went with it, 47,404. Okay, the scope change order number 3 Piling changes ended up being $60,000. We made, now if anyone wants to say Bob made a decision, that 2,700 is my decision. I didn't consult with anybody, didn't ask anybody. So people say, you're spending a lot of money. Yeah, I spent $2,750. We upgraded to the LED lights in the pool. We upgraded to put the fountains in the corner of the pools. With all our banquet business we're shooting for and evening dining, that seemed like a pretty cheap adjustment. To do it afterwards would have been $10,000 or $12,000. I thought it was a reasonable request. At the time, the contractor being Parish Pools, brought it to my attention so we could put it in pretty much at cost except for the pump to run the fountains as well as the LED lights. So we said go ahead and do that. So what that means, you take bid price, change order 1, 2, and 3. Again, we're tracking these to the penny. Contract reconciliation, change order 1, which was board approved and signed. Change order 2 and 3, which we just recently were presented with all the numbers on it. Referendum contingency amounts, 186. Change order 1 and 2, 110 leaves us approximately 76,000 in contingency. Now, the only area here that I would raise as a debatable point on this is, as you know, we put reserve money away, okay, for items that we acquire, capital items that we purchase. In this particular case, we had fully depreciated the fuel tanks. Any work we would have had to do on those, to include if an inspector had come in and saw we didn't have the f-stop, saw we didn't have some of the other things, would have required us to make those upgrades anyway. So the question mark comes in, does the fuel tank change, could it be considered part of the reserve component that we do for reserve replacement? That's a board decision, but I think it's something the board needs to look at along with our accountants to figure out that might be a reasonable approach on that, which would then increase our contingency available per the contract. Either way, it's our money, so it's going to come out one way or the other, but it is something we ought to strongly look at. Additional changes. These are areas that people haven't seen. And again, this is part of the regular maintenance. And again, you know, depending on how we approach moving forward with the contract, the county required, put everything together, went out to RFP, got the bids, ended up having a number, took it to referendum, got the referendum approved. But keep in mind, we don't have a fully designed facility yet. We have kind of a scope. So then AWB draws up the full design of the facility. It has to go through county approval. Part of the county approval, if you recall, and there were delays, so we talked about an awful lot at each board meeting, there were additional parking requirements. The parking that went up next to the pool side was an addition after we ended up with we had to meet the new county codes for parking. If you recall, we had to go down for several hearings on that one. We did. There was approximately $20,000 worth of work that would have been a charge to us because it wasn't part of the original scope. But when when Kevin Olin with AWB working with Harkins, when they started doing it, they were able to offset some of those costs because when you do a bid with the RFP to do your work, they're not tightened up because all the final engineering drawings aren't in. When they did the final drawings for the stormwater management, they were able to reduce some of those costs, but it was a little more cost effective than what was in the original bid contracts. In addition, the county had made us change. If you recall, the first presentation we gave on the building itself, it had the river rock on the outside. It was a veneer stone, a half stone that gets put up. County said, no, that's not, that doesn't meet kind of the current code. The split face did. Ultimately, we went with split face. Well, that was a good decision. That was because it's a cinder block with one side that kind of has the jagged edge, lack of a better term. It's kind of that fancy edge on it. That was cheaper than putting concrete or putting the block and then putting the veneer on it. So that was a cost savings to us. So those two combined were able to eat the cost of the parking lot, which Harkins did not pass on to us as a cost. Second item that came up, when we did the 3 pedestals, not only do we have the cost of chop tank, we also had the cost associated with running all the major wiring from each of the pedestals to the different elements, to the yacht club, to the pool, and to the marina. Finding those, working under those with all the utilities the way they were, it was pretty messy down there. That's why we had shutdowns and cuts and everything else. There was no final plan that had ever been recorded that had all the information, so a lot of work went into that. Harkins absorbed that cost, as part of their contract. And what they did, when they went to the final design on the building, the floor joists had a gap in the original RFP with the design. There was the space in between. If you have 12 to 18 inches, I don't remember the exact term, but whatever that distance is, it has to be sprinklered. By going with the I-beam, you didn't have to have the sprinkler, save the sprinkler side of the house, which ended up, they went to the I-beam, eliminating the need for sprinkler system, and they also went from that veneer around the building to the split face, which is what the county approved, reduced the cost, so that they ate the cost of all the electric from the subcontractor to put it in. So these were two changes we would not get change orders on, but they actually saved us close to $50,000. That's it. Questions? For me or the board? Yes.
Dealing with the tank moving, when you're talking about this, the bond-based contract, change order one, I mean, that 46,261 is basically what was, I'm sorry,
That's right.
that 46,261 is basically what was already in the contract to move the tanks.
No, the tanks, no. The contract, what we ended up spending to move the tanks was more than was in the contract. We had to bring it up. We weren't grandfathered when we started to make the moves on those. We had to meet the current code. Example, the F-stops. F-stops are so you don't fill the tank, you don't completely fill it up. We didn't have that issue before. If you recall, the way our design and the way the new design is, it matches the old one. They have the foundation with the poured slab inside, so if there's a spill, it's all encapsulated in that foundation area. Didn't realize we were going to need F-stops. When the inspectors came out, they said, oh no, you have to put the F-stops in. It was unexpected because we have this diking area that holds any overage or spillage per tank. You have to have so many gallons per tank. So there were changes like that occurred that were required. The other thing is where the connections were made. It was right down by the dockside. They required an additional pit to be put in with the way it split off with the piping because of the distance that the polypropylene pipe had to carry. And based on that and where the pavement was going to be, based on where the building was, we had to go through a whole lot of gyrations on that to get that one finally approved. So there were changes associated with that you wouldn't have known. Does that help answer that?
One last question.
Sure.
Really, this is dated June 20th. And I know you keep saying you brought it to the board's attention, you brought it to the board's attention, you brought it to the board's attention. This is a June 20th change order. Why didn't I see it until September 10th?
Just didn't have time, right? There's no hiding it. There's no upside in hiding it. So, I mean, it's where it is.
There's no upside in hiding it. That doesn't answer my question.
Marty, we're still compliant. I'm going to tell you I didn't have all those facts and figures on June, wherever the date was.
This is dated June 20th. You're
I
telling me
hear
that it's the wrong
I'm
date?
telling you I don't have a good answer for you there. I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay. One thing, Bob,
Yes.
in looking at some of the processes that were put in place when this building was built, which I've been doing over the last couple of weeks, one of the things was this $50,000 worth of savings you just had. In tracking the work on this building, changes like that were in fact treated as cost savings change orders as applying to the budget. So we don't want to ignore 50 grand worth of positive change
Correct.
orders, okay?
Agreed.
In tracking what we're doing here.
We track it.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
How are we going to account for it? All right, and we're going to be meeting with you now, as you have jokingly said, at least twice a month. And my assumption is that about every other week, we're going to be having an update from you directly on the project and where we are financially and operationally in getting this thing done.
Yes.
And we'll handle the motion coming up later on the change order issue. Okay, moving, yes. Yeah.
May I make a request? You know, that's going to be the modus operandi every 2-week update. If an emergency arises, could I receive a commentary of information?
We'll know it.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, public comment. We have a microphone.
We're still, I think we're still going.
done.
Yes,
Yeah, trust me.
Yeah, we have a microphone for public comment.
Working on it. Thanks.
Anybody want to take a bet on whether it works?
Oh, it's gonna work. We'll use yours.
I heard Teresa.
Nice.
Jeff.
Thank you. Joe Reynolds, 84 Watertown Road. Regarding this discussion, this board has a fiduciary responsibility to the association members. I don't believe any one person should have the authority
I'm sorry.
I don't believe any one person should have the authority to make changes, and we don't even know what proposal is going to be made here today in Dan's motion, but my understanding was, in talking to him, that he was talking about giving the general manager unilateral $100,000 per item change order authority. What the motion will be, what the board may or may not decide, I don't know. I would urge you, don't give anyone that kind of authority. Even at the $10,000 to $15,000 level, proper internal controls should dictate that you say at least one other person should take part in approving spending. No one individual should have that kind of authority. Now, we heard here today, when the referendum went out, we were treated to the pretty pictures that showed the stone on the building and the stone on the wall. Now, maybe I just heard wrong, but it appears to me that the general manager, unilaterally, without even asking the board of directors, has decided to remove that stone and put up a cheap concrete block type in its place. I'm concerned about this kind of stuff as an association member. I'm not sure what's going on. The general manager's actions in approving these two change orders took away from this board of directors, his bosses, it took away from you the right to look at these changes and to consider whether, number one, whether they were necessary, number two, whether the price was right. $55,000 on moving the tank. Is this funny, Bob?
I smiled at someone coming in. I don't need you to ask me.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not being rude.
$55,000 to move the tanks. If you look at the referendum material, it says the moving of the tanks is in the referendum. Now, if the moving of the tanks was in the referendum, why did we pay $55,000 to the second subcontractor because Harkin's first contractor failed to do the work? So that delayed the project. Then they bring in a new contractor, and we have to pay this new contractor $55,000 additional. And I say to myself, why? If it was in the contract to start with, why are we paying him $55,000 more? I don't know that. I don't think this board of directors knows that. Somebody's got to rein in this general manager. I don't know who's going to do it because I believe he's got support of at least 4 people on the board to let him do whatever he wants. And I say that in all seriousness. Nobody should have that kind of authority to spend other people's money. Impose at least one other person on his ability to spend money. It's just not right. Thank you.
Anybody else?
30 artists, 37 quarterstaff place. My time is just the way the community's been managed since the town Olson was fired. You currently have Bob Thompson, Billy Casper, and Bob Thompson assistants doing a horrible job compared to what Mr. Olson did. You're paying the salaries of those 3 people easily $300,000 a year or more. Mr. Olson made $140,000 a year. And the bottom line is your losses in golf and food and beverage combined are the greatest ever in the history of Ocean Pines. I do believe as the community moves forward, change is needed. That's all I got to say. Change is needed. We need directors who really care and who want to try to do something good. The last director, I appreciate Marty's comments always about the numbers. has had a vision since. All you do is come in here, sit there, hide behind the word amenity, and just accept losses. How is you, as board president, can sit there and accept $721,000 in losses in your food and beverage and golf business? If this was your investment company, you'd already went broke.
Anybody else? Go again. Okay.
Briefly, I would remind you, most people in this board of directors were not here, not on the board when the community center, the first one up there, that failed, didn't get built. But at that time, the one person who was involved in that, is on the board now, is Dan Stikursky. Dan Stikursky was appointed as the, quote, point man for the project. What happened was, the project fell apart. The Ocean Pines Association subsequently thought that OPA had overpaid the contract management firm and went to court to sue for overpayment. Again, this is one person making the decision, essentially. When that case went to court, we won. We got back, I don't know, $50,000 or so of money. Dan appeared, as I understand it, as a witness for the contractor. So now we're talking about doing the exact same thing, putting one person making all the decisions. Bad move.
They got their subpoena first.
Okay. Okay, new business. Discussion on Magdalen Print Capital's proposal. I've actually asked Bill Rako here today to make this proposal, and just a brief introduction. This is coming out of a cooperative effort from the Tennis Advisory Committee and those that are working. What?
We missed first reading under old business before we go to new business.
Oh, that's right, we moved that,
We
didn't we?
moved that, yes. Sorry.
Sorry. Bill, sit tight for a minute. I thought we
This will be very fast, Bill.
moved it to old business. Okay, go ahead. Mr. Statursky, reading
Thank you.
09.
I move that the Board of Directors repeat the first reading of proposed resolution M-09 with a view toward comments, revision, and possible approval of this resolution at our regular October meeting scheduled for October 26, 2013.
Second.
Any discussion?
And very quickly, you received via email 3 documents, the original M-09 with Mr. Terry's comments on it, the comments from the bylaws committee, and also their final draft of that for your review and your comments. At our next regular meeting, if you'll come back with any comments, we can lock this one up. Yes, sir.
If those comments would be directed to who, you?
Yes, well, they'll be directed to a second reading final motion.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
But if
I will make that motion.
if I have a comment, would I direct that comment to you?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I just had, is there anything I'm not seeing? There's 2 attachment Bs in here, and they look identical except for the size of the.
Yeah, you just got duplicate paper. If you think about how it came through your email, you got one set of everything.
Okay.
It just got doubled up in your package, Marty. It's a mistake. We're just killing trees out here. I think they keep cutting down on the golf course, so we're using them.
Okay, call the question. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? None? Thank you. Now, back to Bill. This came out of a effort between the Advisory Committee for Tennis as well as the Pickleball and Paddleball group, working as a special group, and they've been working very effectively together. And I thank all those that are in part of that. Bill, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Want me to use that?
Please. Where do you want to sit? Up here?
That's all right. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm representing racket sports, tennis, platform tennis, and pickleball. And what I want to do is I want to address the Maitland Meadows campus concept and what the racket sport membership wants to present to the board as a concept. We're not going to ask for any decisions. We're going to ask for some action perhaps, but we just want to let you know what we think we need, so you can put that into the future budgets and the capital improvement plan. The campus concept, as most people know now, that campus, Maple Meadow, includes a softball field, the playground, the dog park, the tennis complex, and the platform tennis complex. I think that's it.
And the
community gardens, right. Okay. What we feel we need there is a master plan for the long range. For example, the board has approved, and it hasn't been implemented yet, to put a batting cage for the softball complex. Where is that going to go? And if we have a long-term plan, we'll know it'll go a place that'll fit in the long-term plan, but if you just put it somewhere real quickly, it might be in the way of something we want to do in the future. Okay? So we have been meeting a few times, the racket sports people, and we think we've come up with our near-term and long-term needs. For tennis, we think that what we've got now is adequate, the 4 hard courts and the 8 hard true soft courts. And the tennis facility has been upgraded. It probably wouldn't last for a long time, but it's satisfactory for us right now, just for us.
When you say facility, you mean the building?
The building, we mean, right. Okay, we also have 4 hard courts at the Swim and Racket Club. And we don't use those very much. They're nice to have, but we'd like to suggest that management and the board look at those to see if that's the best use for that particular land, and whether the maintenance costs that go into there every few years to upgrade those things to make them look decent is worth the use that's being, that the membership has for those. So we're saying that they're nice to have, they're overflow in the wintertime, but maybe we don't really need them in the big picture. That could be a savings, perhaps. Okay? For platform tennis, there's 4 courts there right now. They're fully utilized, during the day. Most of the day they're used. It's a year-round sport. They need, in the near term, 2 more courts. They may need more in the future, but in the near term, 2 more. In the long term, those 2 should suffice. And we're talking about long term, 15 to 20 years or thereabouts.
So near term is like 5 to 10.
Near term is right now.
It's right now.
Right now, and I'll cover that in a phasing recommendation in a minute. As far as pickleball courts go, pickleball, it's a growing sport. It's a soft ball that blows around the wind. You can put how many courts can you put on 2 on a regular tennis court, for example? Okay, and the pickleball people believe, and we feel that in the near term we need 4 courts. In the long term we may need 6. So we should plan for 6 for the long term, but we should get 4 in the near term. Now, as far as the building goes, okay, the building does not support a combined racket membership right now. Okay, we've looked at a couple of options. One option would be to rehab the existing building, put a 2nd floor on it, an observation deck all around it, upgrade it somewhat, and the advantages are we'd have a better building. It could be used and all that, but the disadvantages are, it wouldn't be insulated properly. It's old. We don't know what kind of footings it would support a new, an enhanced building. It might be adequate, but we also looked at new construction or replacement of the existing building with a new building. And, the advantages obviously are you'd have an air-conditioned, a properly heated space, it'd be modern, you'd have better restroom facilities, the observation deck upstairs, because it could be winterized properly, could be used for any Ocean Pines activity, social events, meetings, card games, whatever. But it'd be a facility for year-round use and it would last, 30, 40 years. Whereas a rehab building of that existing building would not. So those are a couple of considerations we like to offer for the long term. We don't think they're needed now because we haven't expanded yet. The membership hasn't grown for pickleball and for paddleball, and we're trying to also grow our own tennis membership. So we think, though, that a rehab or a new building, replacement building, should be placed in a long-term plan. Okay? So that's where our needs are. Now, what are the phasing? We believe that in FY, right now, phase 1, we believe we need to develop a master plan. And we have come up with some ideas. Tim, would you want to bring that up so we can hold it up and show it to them? Is what we're trying to get done over there feasible? All right? And we've done some studies. Tim Lund is a certified land planner. We've gone down to the county and talked to them to consider stormwater management and things like that. What we're going to show you is not... Back up a little bit. Back up, Tim. Right back here, Tim. I'm going to show the big picture. Back up a little bit. Okay. What we're going to show you is a possible solution. We've got 4 courts, the pickleball courts back here in this area. We've got 2 more platform tennis courts here. We've got a couple of the other 2 pickleball courts that could be put in later. We aren't too concerned about the building because there's a lot of impervious surface there right now, and no matter what we decide to do, that's not going to be an issue. The big picture on this is stormwater management. We should have a stormwater management plan that supports all the future growth and a long-range plan to include where are we going to put that batting cage.
That's under, I'm waiting for Sonia to tell me about electrical needs, that kind of stuff. And what we would like to situate near the softball court because they're associated with the job.
But we're working
I do have a couple spots that I got dimensions from Sonia, and I have a couple spots where I would suggest to the board for that to be placed.
Okay, so we do have a solution that would fit in addition to all the things we want to do, right?
I think it's only a 15 or 18 foot by 80 foot, and I need to know if it's on a pad. So we're in our very early stages.
Usually you don't. You normally put a batting cage on the surface that you'll be batting on. It's like you put a golf.
So it'll be on grass. But the county will still perceive that as being impervious. So I will have to look at that.
Okay, so what we're saying is that we really shouldn't be placing that approved batting cage there until we come up with a master site plan. And we think that needs to be done. That's phase 1, getting the site plan done with the potential improvements to the Maitland Meadows campus. Okay?
And part of what we talked about yesterday was not only that, but also the stormwater, the plan itself needs to take in all of this eventually, right?
Right. It'd be what the county would like to see is a stormwater management plan for the next several years, not just for, okay, we're going to put 2 courts in, let's solve that little problem now, and then we'll solve the next problem. We need to solve the entire problem into the long-range plan.
Well, here's the issue, Bill. We already have, as you know, stormwater issues there.
We do, and they've been addressed individually, in partial.
Kind of almost maybe solved, but
Exactly.
they haven't been solved.
Right. So this would solve the long-range stormwater management plan, and it would include all the things that you might want to include in the capital improvement plan in your process. Okay, so phase 1 would be the master site plan. Okay?
Correct.
And again, we've checked into the feasibility of this, and we haven't got a solution, but we've been working with the county people, and there is a solution that can be made. In other words, it's feasible to do this, okay? There's a lot of different things that could make it happen, but it can be done. Okay, phase 2 would be what we would like to see included in fiscal year 15, the one you're working on right now. We'd like to see the 2 platform tennis courts put in and the 4 pickleball courts put in FY15. And lastly, in phase 3 is in the maybe 3 to 5 year or thereabout time frame, take a hard look at what we're going to do with the building and evaluate options. And I've come up with some drawings for both the rehab and the new construction, but I'm not going to give them to you because they're not the solution. They're just, we did that just to say, is this going to work, you know? And I did some crystal balling as far as cost go, and that's all it is, crystal balling. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about is costs. We have data and are pretty certain we know what the platform tennis and the pickleball courts will cost. Platform tennis will cost about $37,500 per court. Pickleball about $30,000 per court.
How much?
We can give 30. We can give this data. We aren't here to talk detailed numbers with you all now. This is the big picture type thing, but we'd be more than glad to provide our numbers on everything we've got to the facilities manager, and he can evaluate them and put them in the capital improvement plan for your review and tell us before it goes to the board. We'll be glad to provide any data we've collected and give it to Jerry. Okay? Now, as far as the building goes, you know, those are. I don't want to get into the numbers now, but I'll be more than happy to provide numbers to Jerry for ballpark figuring. But until you actually design something up, you don't know what it's going to cost. All right? So that's really what we wanted to present. Any questions?
Any questions, Ken?
Sharon?
I want to just be sure I was clear. On the pickle, you need 4 courts immediately, but the maximum of 8? Is that
The maximum of 6.
Maximum of 6.
Mm-hmm. Now, we prepared a very rough draft, capital improvement plan input, which again, we're going to give to management to evaluate, to check the numbers, and to do what they have to do before it gets to the board. This is all, what I've given you now is all in writing, but again, I just wanted to present a concept so that it would work up the way it's supposed to work out.
And if I can clarify, the paddle, do you have a need for 4 or 2
We have
now? 2 now?
For
And then an additional?
pickleball, we have a need for 4 in FY15 and for 2 in the future. Okay, 2 more, for a total of 6. For platform tennis, we want 2 more. 2 more platform tennis in FY15 and 4 new pickleball in FY15.
Now, with these new courts, I'm assuming there'll be more people playing, so what about parking? I know, Tim, we talked about that. Is
Okay.
that-
Parking is a huge issue that we've
Yeah.
already talked to the county about.
Okay, parking is a mystery when you get right down to it, because they have a maximum if you're doing a sports recreation area, and you really can't put any more than that in, even if you need them. It's hard to explain, but we've talked to the parking people, and in the near term, we're not going to be required, we don't think, to have any more parking places. In the long term, we are. If that building is rebuilt, and that's going to be a social use as opposed to just recreational use, outdoor recreation, then we're going to need some more parking. And that needs to be developed in this master plan, and we don't feel like we're qualified to do that.
What kind of cost are we looking at for the master plan? Is there any cost?
You mean to have the surveyor do it?
Because you're asking for phase 1 as a master plan. That's what you're asking for
Right.
now. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Okay. So is there a cost involved with this master plan?
Yes, there is.
That's what I'd like to ask. Okay.
Well, we're talking about probably engaging our surveyor who already has done most of the stuff out there. Most of his work he's going to have to do is office work. He's going to have to do some pretty detailed stormwater management things. And I don't know, a few $1,000s. What do you think, Marty? For a new site plan and a stormwater management plan?
I don't know.
I don't know either, but I don't think it's going to be
It's not
a lot of money.
Yeah, we're not-
But it needs to be done. It
$50,000
needs to be done in order before you place that,
No question, it
Yeah.
needs to be done, no question.
before you place that batting cage in the wrong place, it needs to be done.
No, thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry. Bill, how many people does this impact?
How many people?
Players.
Players? Well, we've got, 175 or so tennis players. How many platform tennis? 118 platform tennis.
170.
We're not sure of the exact numbers on pickleball because since there's so few, they play in here now, they play outside. We don't really know the overall extent. We have a list of names of people. How many? 134 on their list of players. There's no membership for that now, But there's and as the facility expands, maybe more people will be doing it,
731, you had 106 platform tennis player memberships, 170.
Those memberships are those players. Memberships equate to money. Players, if you have family members, you've got at least 2. So, we're talking about people, we're talking about membership.
You got 12. I can't tell you for tennis. You got a lot of family.
We talked about this in our meeting, and we said, we don't want to throw numbers out here today on things like that. But really, when management presents it, management probably to justify it to you all are going to have to come up with some people numbers of actual players and
Some play
propose
2
membership
sports
too.
or 2 or 3 of the events, don't they? I mean, some of the people play 2.
Some of them, yeah.
Or all of them, yeah, okay.
A lot of them play more than one sport.
Very active group. And by the way,
Yeah.
your pro-am this past week.
Okay, well,
Wonderful.
thank you for letting us make our presentation.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys. Appreciate all your work. Well, good solid effort there. Okay, Marty, Osprey Point, if that's a short-circuited version of your motion.
Oh, sure.
I got it right here. You want mine?
I'm moving that the Board of Directors support and encourage the effort currently underway by Pines Point Marina Condominium in conjunction with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, the Army Corps of Engineers, to protect and restore the islands. Now, the restore part is part of what was added last night or the day before at the Environmental and Natural Assets Advisory Committee. The islands belonging to Ocean Pines Association, Inc., lying just to the northeast of Osprey Point condominiums from additional erosion. This effort has the support of the Environmental and Natural Assets Advisory Committee, as well as the Marine Advisory Committee.
Have a second? Bill, second. Okay, discussion.
Well, over the last, does everybody know where I'm talking about? It used to be called Jenkins Point. It's, it actually, in its day, protected Turns Landing, Pintail Point. It protects the entranceway to our marine, Ocean Pines Marina. And it's just been, it's eroding at a very rapid rate. Higher tides, more boat traffic development. Pines Point Marina has been working with the Corps of Engineers and Natural Resources on getting us some spoils, dredge spoils from Army Corps of Engineers,
Right.
and allowing us, and also helping us protect it from boat traffic. there's a couple of separations in there, if you look at an aerial, that boats are, in order to avoid the speed limit signs, are cutting through there. And every time they cut through there, with more erosion. Disclosure, I do own a condominium at Pines Point Marina.
Just to clarification, when you say support, I think I know.
No money.
No money, yeah,
No
we're talking about us basically saying to appropriate people, we're in favor of this.
There's a meeting on the 10th of next month in Cambridge on this issue, and they need they haven't been able to get permission from Osprey Point because they can't find the lead person. And they've asked us, because we do own the ground, to say it's okay. That's it in a nutshell.
Support from us simply means
Go get them.
representative attending saying, God bless you, go do it.
Well,
That's it.
Yeah, this is all volunteer effort.
yeah, and what they're going to do, Marty, is use dredge, right? They're going to dredge in some area and dump it on this island.
There is some hope that we can capture some of the dredging from the new boat ramp in Ocean City. Ocean City's going to capture sand. I mean, we're up against the giant there. They're taking all the sand. But going out to deep water, we start getting into some stuff that's not beachable. It would come over and they would dump that and slowly try to restore that island. I mean, it used to be not an island, it was a peninsula.
Really?
Now it's an island. It was a peninsula 20 years ago.
I don't think we need any more discussion on this one at this point. All those in favor of supporting this activity? Aye, opposed? No, thank you. Done.
Thank you.
And now that we've got that motion in place, I'm assuming we're referencing that we would like Bob Thompson to remember his staff, or have Bob appoint somebody to attend that meeting to represent us, or should we send someone?
You don't have to.
What
I
should
mean,
we do?
I
Or is it
really
just a
don't.
letter? What do we need to do what?
You just did it.
Okay,
I mean, this gentleman by the name of George Maynard
let's go.
is
taken care of.
leading the charge, and he's on the Marine.
Okay.
He's
Fair
not on the Marine Advisory. He will be in an hour.
All right, so we don't need to do anything.
We don't need to do anything. I may attend the meeting only because it's in Cambridge and I'm there.
All right, fair enough. Okay, FO2, FO3, FO4, Dan.
Motion that the Board of Directors initiate a review of resolutions FO2, FO3, and FO5. That review should proceed as follows. Comments from the Budget and Finance Committee to the Board due by the regular October Board meeting on Saturday, October 26th, followed by a Board discussion of any changes desired by the Directors to take place at the regular Board meeting scheduled for November 20th. Comments from the Budget and Finance Committee and from the Board will then be sent to Mr. Trummel and the Bylaws Committee for their information. Revised resolutions FO2, FO3, and FO5 should be submitted to the Board for first reading on December 18, 2013.
Second.
Have a second? Okay. Discussion?
I sent everybody on the Board a copy. I just put this motion over the email from Jim Trummel describing the process.
Everybody have that?
Is there any problem with that, other than the fact that you got to go read 3 resolutions? They are available online, so we're not killing trees to pass them around.
They haven't changed, right?
You need to go look at them. There might be a couple things you want to change.
I don't want to change anything.
Okay.
Have they been changed?
No, this is starting the process here and getting Mr. Trummel and his people into the act downstream of that.
I'll call the question on this. All those in favor? Aye, opposed? None. Thank you. I'm going to call it contract management. Dan, your motion.
The motion to this is long. And I'll read it just so everybody understands what's going on. There's a lot of reasons in front for the motion itself. Pursuant to OPA bylaws section 5.14 entitled Duties, which reads in part, quote, "The duties of the Board of Directors shall include, but not be limited to, those set forth in this section," end quote. Under paragraph B of this section, quote, "The board shall employ, enter into a contract with, delegate authority to, and supervise the general manager or a professional community management firm to administer, manage, and conduct the operations of the association. And pursuant to the fact that the board has approved a contract for a new yacht club, and that contract has been executed by the president of the association, and pursuant to the fact that Section 2 owner of said contract specifies in paragraph 2.1, quote, "The owner shall designate a representative authorized to act on the owner's behalf with respect to the project," end quote. Therefore, I move that the Board of Directors acknowledge the appointment as announced by President Terry at the execution of the contract of OPA General Manager Bob Thompson, the Senior Administrator and Manager of OPA Operations, as the owner's representative on this contract as specified when the contract was executed, and furthermore, to limit the authority of Mr. Thompson in his administration and management of this contract with regard to approval of changes under Section 8, changes in the work of this contract, to changes that do not exceed $100,000 in value. And furthermore, to charge the Ocean Pines Association Board of Directors with the responsibility of approving in a prompt manner so as not to cause unnecessary delay in the project any change in the work under this contract that will result in a value exceeding $100,000. And furthermore, to charge the president of the board to advise all board members in writing, electronically, or by voice communication as soon as it is apparent that a change in this contract exceeding $100,000 will be forthcoming, so that the board is aware of the need for board approval when the change is properly documented, defined, and valued. That's my motion, Mr. President.
I will second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, discussion.
If I may continue for a moment before everybody else jumps in, sir. First of all, that a lot of the pursuant tos are in there just to define for everybody that as the general manager, Mr. Thompson, in my mind's eye, certainly is the logical person to administer and manage this contract, inasmuch as he's been employed by the board to manage and administer operational functions within Ocean Pines. In fact, President Terry announced the fact that our general manager would be the designated representative authorized to act on the owner's, OPA's, behalf with respect to the contract when he, Mr. Terry, executed the contract. This function, i.e. representative, includes the full management and administration of the contract, including, amongst many other things, change orders. There was no objection or comment from the board at that time. We are now in the operating phase of this contract, and not surprisingly, we are seeing changes to the original plan. This is not unusual. Even though the board did not elect to limit the general manager's authority with respect to this contract, it has become apparent that changes have been, and most probably will continue to be, necessary to build a new yacht club. It is for the protection of the members of OPA as well as the general manager and staff that this motion, designed to activate the approval of the board of directors when major changes are necessary or recommended, is presented. And I'll add one more comment and then shut up. I picked $100,000 a little bit out of the sky. That number could be $50,000, it could be $25,000, it can be whatever you want it to be. But it was clear to me when we started having discussions a couple of meetings ago on change orders that the board had not had a discussion on how we were going to administer this contract. And that's what this motion is really all about. We need to have agreed upon some method, this one or something else, that says, this is how we're going to go about doing the business of building this building, so that it doesn't take 1,000,000 years to build, it doesn't take 1,000,000 meetings by the board of directors to do it, and it does develop teamwork between the board, the general manager and his management team, and our contractor. Thank you.
Marty?
Dan, you can't have it both ways. You say there's no policy, but Mr. Terry said, well, what Mr. Terry said has no effect. We've had a policy that's worked for over 15 years. And what you're recommending here is a change in that policy. And it, quite honestly, doesn't even make a tiny bit of sense to me. We are responsible. You're absolutely right. The 7 of us are responsible. We can delegate all the authority you want, but we're still responsible. There's nothing new in your emotion about who's responsible. And I'm not willing just to give it up. I was elected to do these things. If it requires a couple extra meetings, when there's a change order involved, I'll make myself available. And so would you, I believe. But if we want to just give it all to Bob, why don't we give him $1 million spending authority and not have any more meetings?
That's it? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't want to steal anybody else's thunder, but I think the phrase fiduciary responsibility was kicked around a little bit earlier this afternoon, early evening. And, when I decided to run for this board, it was a long decision process. And there are a couple people in this room that I counseled with because, I didn't know if I really wanted to do this. But in counseling with them, they kind of opened my eyes to the responsibility that a person has to take in living in a community and contributing to the community. And, with the knowledge, the experience, and I'm older than most people up here, that you develop over the years, you use that to help the community, the group that you live with and work with, move forward in a positive direction. I really do take my fiduciary responsibility quite seriously. I mean, there's a way that I think that Dan's motion can be amended. I think that each and every one of us should be very, very careful how they consider this. And I don't want to accuse anybody of shirking responsibility or anything of that nature, but I do know that I promised the folks that voted for me that I would do the best of my ability to serve on this board and move this board forward in a positive direction, and I'm going to do it. And one of the things that I would like to all of us adhere to is trust in the folks out there who put us here, and their trust coming back to us in making decisions in their best benefit and accepting the responsibility of protecting them. I will add one more thing. I think it is grossly unfair to put this burden on Bob Thompson, which will open up a plethora of criticism. Maybe, I don't even know if he even wants this authority. I'm willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with Bob Thompson and equalize that responsibility. So I'll take the pressure and I'll take the criticism and I'll take the necessary finger pointing along with Bob Thompson, so that he's not by himself in this whole project.
I have two things to respond to. One,
was whether or not I have the authority as the signature of the contract to appoint who our representative would be. By being appointed by this board to sign the contract language stated we could name someone, so I named someone. So be it, it's Bob, it was obvious. Beyond that, there's been a comment made here today that I think was very reasonable, and that is the idea of there being two signatures, so that there be at least another name on approval lines, and I think that's a reasonable thing to think about. Beyond that, as I have shared with others, $100,000 figure. Right.
It's already a matter of policy.
Okay.
You just gotta open the book and read it.
Thanks, Marty. I think the $100,000 figure is too broad at that point. I do think that the $15,000 figure, which is in the books, is too low for a project of this size. So somewhere between 15 and 100 is where I think a reasonable number would make sense to me. That's just my 2 cents on it. I think the number needs to be lower than 100,000, but certainly $15,000 worth of, if we don't trust, talk about the word trust, we have to have trust with our own members. We also have to have trust with someone who's trying to run the whole community. And I'm sure you do.
That's unfair.
What?
That is really unfair.
What?
This has nothing to do with trusting Bob Thompson.
Nothing.
Nothing to do with trust. It has to. I think Bob Thompson does his best. I really do. I have nothing against Bob Thompson. I think that Bob Thompson is trying to do a good job for this organization and this OPA. He needs help.
Right.
And I would approach it from a positive point of view. Let's support him and help him accomplish the construction of this project as best we can. And the best way to do that is shared responsibility. And I'm not raising these points on an issue of trust. And I don't want anybody out there to get the impression that I got a problem with Bob Thompson, because I don't have a problem with Bob Thompson. But if I can help him be successful, I'm going to do it.
Good, Jack. Let me make sure that you understand. My comment had nothing to do with what you had said. What I was referring to was the fact that $15,000 on a project of this size, I look for the team that's managing this, and we do have Jerry and Eddie, and it's not a person by himself. I trust, and I'll use the word trust, for that group to be doing the week-to-day, day-to-day management, week-to-week management of this. I trust them to make good decisions. But there is a dollar amount at which I think we ought to share the responsibility. So I was in complete agreement with you. I was not disagreeing with anything you said.
Well, I misunderstood. I
Yeah,
thought
you
were.
did.
Okay.
You did
I was
misunderstand.
agreeing with you.
You did misunderstand.
I misunderstood, and I apologize for that. But
Me too.
you never know what gets in the press, Tom.
I know.
And you never know what someone perceives another person saying.
Well,
So I just wanted to go on the record that I don't have a bone to pick with Mr. Thompson over there.
That's fine.
I'm glad you misunderstood. I appreciate the positive comment, just so you know. And I mean that.
Now you're acting like a general manager.
Bill, go ahead.
If those figures that we saw earlier to be believed, we're down to a little less than $80,000 in our contingency. I don't believe those figures because I believe there's things in there about the pool and all that added in there, and the cradles and all that can be disputed that we're down that low anyway. $100,000, we don't have that. We don't have that in contingency. So that makes no sense. I'd be willing to split in half with what our contingency remains, around $40,000, and have two people on there. Jack has a very good point, and Joe had a very good point. Have two people on there approving that, and then anything over the contingency has got to come back to us anyway.
Bill, I would agree with that. I like the 40,000 number, and I also appreciate the two signatures, just so there's a conversation and a check safe between two, and I would like to recommend that the general manager and the president of the association be the two to sign.
Now, it's coming to us for approval. I have to honestly state that as much as I want to support this, I would have to then be voting for something that I actually signed on to. I would look for someone other than a member of the board, Sharon, to be the other signature. I don't, Jerry or somebody else on the team could do it as far as I'm concerned.
So what you're saying is they would be signing after we gave approval?
No.
Up to, okay, I need clarification.
Let's understand, as I understood the signature suggestion would be that when something needed to come to us for approval, there would be two signatures on that, that there were at least two people proposing that this change be made. Or was the suggestion that, and I'm going to suspend the rules here for a second to ask Joe, was the suggestion that there be two signatures on the change order? Or just on the proposal for us to approve? Which is it?
Well,
Just answer the question, which is it?
oh, let me explain briefly. There's a difference between signing the change order and approving the change order. Before a change order is approved by OPA, somebody, one person, 2 people, 10 people, somebody, one or more, has to approve it. What I'm saying is before there's an approval made, there should be 2 signatures. I would not recommend that an employee of the general manager be the second signature by any stretch of the imagination.
Just as I was suggesting,
With all
be
due
president.
respect to Bob.
And I don't think it ought to be.
I think it needs to be somebody on the board.
All right. Hang on, we'll one at a time. Dan, you haven't gotten in there yet.
Well, first of all, I'd be more than happy to amend the $100,000 to $40,000 if that's an acceptable number. I don't have a problem at all with that. Secondly, I think that we need to remember the process that Bob just walked us through in his general manager's report on how this project is currently being managed day to day. We have 2 qualified people from our staff who are working on site with Harkins on a day-to-day basis. They're providing they're writing a report for themselves, for Harkins, who's on the circulation list for this report, for Mr. Thompson, and for our controller. So that at the end of every month, when we look at where are we in terms of our project, in terms of time, money, materials, and progress, it's there in writing. So there is a double check or triple check system going on in the management of this project at this point in time. In terms of paying checks, Mr. Clark is quite right. There is a process in place in Ocean Pines that doesn't change. Mr. Thompson or the general manager, whoever it is, can only sign a check for $15,000. There has to be 2 signatures on that check over $15,000. The first signature is Bob's, and the second signature is either our president's or our treasurer's at this point in time, or the vice president if you so delegate. I'll get there, Marty. I'll get off the floor. One of the biggest problems in a job like this, from my perspective, is that as soon as we start getting too many people involved, and I'm not talking about oversight, I have every faith in the fact, frankly, that Bob, like anybody else in his position, is going to make sure that everybody's floating in the same boat that he's floating in. If he sees some big changes or he sees anything coming along that is going to take this job off the track or get it off the rails or get it out of line, this board is going to be the first group to hear about it. What this motion does is it quantifies that just a little bit by making certain people responsible for specific communication, which we hadn't had until now. So when you're looking for a second signature on these things, Joe's right. Change orders are a multi-step process. They're not a single easy process, and we've already seen it. But what we're looking at in terms of this job, and please keep this in mind, we're starting off with 45-year-old infrastructure in areas that we don't even know what's under the ground, much less what we're going to have to do to really start building foundations and building a new building. Once this building starts coming out of the ground, a lot of these problems are going to go away, because then it becomes a pretty straightforward process of here's the plans, up we go, and we've got a very good contractor to do that. The problems we've bumped into that are expensive are up there on the wall already, I think. Last but not least, we had a discussion during our training / briefing session last week where our assistant treasurer talked for a little while about reserves. And one of the things he talked about that I thought was a really good discussion was the fact that given the yacht club or anything associated with it, if it were something that we had built and was being depreciated or was fully depreciated, whether it was replaced in the existing yacht club before it was knocked down or in a new yacht club, it's not part of the budget of that building. It is, in fact, a charge to our historic reserve for replacement. So that changes some of the numbers you were looking at up there on that sheet. Yes, it does. It's not part of the budget. It's part of what we would be doing one way or the other. I think Pete's, to quote Pete, pretty precisely, he said to us, look, if the kitchen equipment is going bad and you have to replace it and it's depreciated, it doesn't make any difference if you replace it in the existing building, in a new building, or in a circus tent out in the parking lot. You're still going to pay for it out of your reserve accounts, and it doesn't affect your budget or your reserves for this job. Now, that's another argument for another day, perhaps, with the board, but for the most part, I think we really are at the point where we can make a decision today on how we manage this job, how we support our general manager in managing this job, how we solve Jack's problem and my problem about communications on what's going on with this job, and get on with getting a building out of the ground before 1999 in the next century. Let's move on. No, I meant about 39. It could go on forever. I don't want to see that happen.
You can tell. Three quick items, Dan. First, the malarkey about whether it comes out of reserves or not. Everything's coming out of reserves. The building, the furniture, the drapes.
Sure. No, but it's an accounting.
I'm talking about the promise that you made, this board made, before I got on it, to the membership, all inclusive, all in 4.3. And that included, there's a long and lengthy list. We're not going to rewrite the referendum, which you know you're very familiar with. Number two, I've been in the construction business 45 years. I can tell you change orders are always tough. But I'll take a board of directors on a commercial change order over a husband and wife on a residential in a heartbeat. We're making a problem out of no problem. Everything we're sitting here talking about during dinner time and cocktail hour is addressed. May I read you the check signing policy, or does anybody care?
We know what the check signing policy.
You don't. You don't, because you're sitting here and we're all talking about Bob signing checks. Bob's not on the check signing authority according to our policy. Now, the policy is 26 years old. If you want to change it, we ought to change it. But you guys just ignore it. Here it is, execution of checks. Do you want to hear it or not? Every check for payment of money in the association shall, unless otherwise ordered by the board of directors or required by law, signed by either the treasurer, an assistant treasurer, or the president of the board. Limits and guidelines on the execution of checks shall be established by the board of directors as specified in section 5.14G of the bylaws. That's probably changed. Presently, 5 directors and or officers have been authorized to sign checks. Okay? Moreover, checks exceeding $15,000 must be signed by 2 such individuals. So let's spend another hour talking about a check policy.
But there is, Marty, I don't disagree with you. With everything that you're saying and reading, it's exactly right. It's right out of the book. What you always tend to do when you read these things is ignore the out clauses. everybody wrote into those things when they wrote them. Read the first 4 words on that again. And it say unless otherwise specified.
Unless otherwise ordered by the board.
Bob is the assistant
Yes,
treasurer?
that's,
Bob
okay.
is the assistant.
I'm sorry, Bob has every right to be one of the two after
And
Cliff.
our, since I've been in Ocean Pines and part of the board, which is now in 9 years,
Uh-huh.
okay, the president has been able to sign, I believe at the order of some board, at some point, a check up to $15,000 with no second signature.
Says it right
So
here.
not the president, I'm sorry, the general manager.
Says it right here.
General manager.
Assistant treasurer.
It says assistant treasurer, which is why he is the assistant treasurer.
It says it right here. We're all in agreement on that.
And then our policy has been, our operating policy has been that the president or the treasurer of the board countersigns anything larger than that. So we've already got the 2-signature policy in effect.
Why are we debating? It's my question.
Well, that's a very good point. Why are we debating?
Well,
I just said 5 minutes ago, we understand the check writing policy. We're following the check writing policy. What we're debating here, and it's very clear, is are we going to take the $15,000 check writing policy? Are we going to use the $15,000 change order? Is that what we're going to use for the change order limit?
That's also in here. You also have in your contracts.
I'd like to,
Go for it.
Check.
I would like to offer an amendment to the motion on the table, or the one that Dan Stursky has proposed. I move that in paragraph 5, it be amended to read, paragraph 5 is the one that, I'll read it to you, to limit the authority of Mr. Thompson in his administration and management of this contract with regard to approval of changes under Section 8, changes in the work of this contract to the changes that do not exceed $40,000 in value with the knowledge, the advice, and the consent of the Board of Directors. Also, part of that amendment, paragraph 7, the sentence reads, to change or to charge the president of the board to advise all board members in writing, electronically, or by voice communication as soon as it is apparent that a change in this contract will be forthcoming, striking the words exceeding $100,000, so that the board is aware of the need for the board approval when the change is properly documented, defined, and valued. The thought process is, as I pointed out before,
You need a second first.
oh,
Is there a second?
Paragraph, well, you're missing paragraph, in the one in between.
No.
Yeah.
Good.
Signature?
paragraph 5, paragraph 7, that's the only two.
I'm
items.
missing with the 100,000.
You got to kick out,
The middle 100,000, you got to change that too. That's
Right
good.
here, 6 is the 100,000.
that should be 40,000.
All right, we've got an amendment with a second. Jack, there's discussion and a question.
And the rationale behind this is not to be contentious. The rationale behind, and I mean this sincerely, I just think it is our responsibility to accept the responsibility of building this building with Bob Thompson. And I think that it can be done effectively, efficiently, especially with all of the wonderful innovations that Verizon has instituted in the telephonic industry, as well as internet, as well as any other form of communication that you can think of. We can reach out to one another in a very, very short period of time. And I think that it would behoove each and every one of us, put every one of us on the same page, and work towards a final solution in eliminating all this Oostrup job.
I need a little clarification on the impact. And it's just basically, you added the words "with knowledge and advice of the board."
Advise and consent of the board.
for things over 40,000 or under 40,000?
Not to exceed 40,000 in value with the knowledge, advice, and consent of the board of directors.
Well, then you're basically saying every single change order he wants to do, the board has to approve.
I think that's what it says.
So then I can't, I'm not, well, my personal reaction to that is I'm not gonna ask Bob Thompson to come back to the board of directors for a $100 change.
No,
If-
it's 40,000.
Okay.
That's not what you just said.
Yeah, so
That's
you-
his
I'm just trying to get the words
Yeah,
right, that's
the way
all.
you read
I'm
it.
trying to understand.
You and
what
I
you're
are
saying.
not in disagreement here, it's a matter of getting the words right.
Okay. Of this contract to the changes that do not exceed $40,000
In other words,
in
any
value
change.
with the knowledge, advising, and consent of the board of directors.
So if there's a change over 40,000 or more, $40,001 or more,
No.
that has to come to the board.
No.
Under that, it does not have to come to the board.
Now, what this says is that if there is a change order over Bob's current ability of $15,000, he has to come to the board for approval.
What's the 40,000? You're saying 15.
No, that's the number that you guys wanted. You guys wanted 40,000.
I'm not understanding. What you're saying is any change order at all, if it's $100, you want to see it.
No.
No, he's saying
No.
it's the original 15,000, but you guys are talking about changing that to 40.
You guys are talking about changing it to 40. What I'm saying is that if you're going to change it to 40, he's got to come back to the board.
So you might as well just leave it at 15.
So what you're saying is keep it at 15. That's your proposed amendment, not 40, 15.
If it exceeds 40,000 is what I said.
If it
It's gotta-
exceeds, so if it's 41,000, then it comes to the board for their advice.
Has to come to the
If
board.
it's under 40,000, then it does not have to come to the board for advice. Am I correct? Is that what you're saying?
No, he has to provide us with the knowledge and advice and receive the advice and consent of this board.
Jack, I'm hearing two different things.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not making sense.
All right, then let's put it this way then. Changes in work of this contract to the changes that do not exceed $15,000 in value with the advice and consent of the board of directors.
So what you're saying now, I just want to understand, what you're saying, any change order up to 15,000 is fine for Mr. Thompson to make.
That's
If
right.
it's $15,001, it has to come to the board
That's
first.
correct.
That's what you're saying. Before you said that was 40, but now you're at 15.
Now, with it.
You're modifying your modification. So what, Mr. Parliamentarian, what do we do now? We have a second on this, don't we?
And we have a second on the original
Yeah.
motion to amend, and I think that you need to discuss it, Mr. President, and then decide on call the question.
Right, I think the original motion amendment was for 40,000. I'll call the question on that with the, anybody understand what's going on? So,
Wait. If you're gonna do it for 40,000, I need to hear the motion.
Well, Mr. President, I think I can read that back.
Could somebody do it?
The
Because
motion,
and Dan's got it.
Dan's got the $40,000 one, which is
Just
the
to-
original one.
Jack is asking us to amend this motion to read in paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to limit the authority of Mr. Thompson and his administration and management of this contract with regard to approval of changes under Section 8, changes in the work of this contract, to changes that do not exceed $40,000 in value with the knowledge, advice, and consent of the Board of Directors. And then in the next paragraph, although you didn't make it, Jack, it's implicit that exceeding $100,000 goes to $40,000. And last but not least, in the last paragraph, second line, communications as soon as it is apparent that a change in the contract will be forthcoming so that the board is aware of the need.
So for clarification, we're just changing 15,000 to 40.
you know what? I'm going to
Changing
No,
that.
I'm gonna-
140 with.
I
with
did
the-
not get a second on that $15,000.
I think Marty said it.
Did you
Marty?
second the
No, you did.
15,000?
I'll second.
No, you
No,
can't.
no,
Did you
no,
make
no,
a
we
motion?
can't
make another
Did you-
motion.
Did you check?
Can't take
No
a
one second. Just let it stand on its own merits.
at
Let the
40,000.
motion stand on its own merits.
So the number is 40 grand in the motion. So in essence, the effect is anything over 40 grand has to come to the board, under 40 grand. We need to be informed of it in our meetings, but I'm just doing what the impact of this thing is.
You're discussing.
I'm discussing it, and the impact would be,
Who's the second?
I was.
Terry is the second. The impact of this would be, as I understand it, is that $40,001 would need to come to the board for us to approve it. Anything 40,000 and below, Bob would have the authority and his team to make that decision. However, we still need to be informed of it at our meetings and updated so we know what's going on. We can't make a $35,000 change and not let us know about it. That's the impact as I understand the intent of this motion at this point.
Right.
Is everybody in agreement that that is the impact of this if we pass it?
No.
Okay, Dan?
I think it is the impact of that if in fact you delete with the knowledge, advice, and consent of the board of directors. However, when you plug that phrase in, where John plugged it in, it means that every change, as far as I'm concerned,
That's right.
comes to the board,
Right.
period.
Right.
If you, however, get rid of that and take out, as he has in the last paragraph, the words exceeding $100,000, then every change that is going to happen to this contract comes to the board.
Right.
As soon as the general manager and president are aware that a change is brewing, so that the board is aware that changes are coming. Now, that allows, under our parliamentary procedure and Robert's rules, for two members of the board to say, we need a special meeting on that change that's coming down the road. So there is a way for you to step in and provide oversight to Bob if you think he needs it. But you got to remember something else, folks. Changes can go two ways. Some changes may cost money, and some changes may save money. Now, you can tell Bob, if you're going to save $40,000, we have to approve that too.
I would suggest, and parliamentarian can shoot me later, I would suggest that the wording be with knowledge. We have already said over 40 grand has to be approved. Up to 40 grand, it's with knowledge and advice. Take out consent.
No.
Well, then we're having to approve everything above 15 grand. We're having to
We have to
approve
approve
all.
everything.
Yeah.
$100, we have to approve everything. But that word in there, consent of the board, knowledge, advice, and consent is everything. That's what it's saying.
Here we go again. I mean, we're just digging ourselves into the hole. It's written. It's already done, and it's worked well since 1998 on this one. General manager is authorized to make purchases and contracts up to $15,000, including capital purchases. But why are we rewriting the rules at the last minute? Are we dumbing down? I mean, why? What's the problem here?
Well, my understanding is that this only applies to this project.
Yes.
I mean, it goes away after this project is completed. He does not have authority to spend 2x times 15,000. This is just yacht club specific.
Why don't you withdraw your motion?
But
Withdraw your.
Make that the bust.
Withdraw your motion.
all right, I'll withdraw the motion. I'll withdraw the amendment to the motion because
And then,
I'll withdraw the motion.
All right. Before you vote on the motion, Mr. President, and I know this is unusual, but I'd like to offer an amendment.
go ahead, I was going to, but you go right ahead.
And that's to change $100,000 in the three instances where it appears to $40,000. Except for the last paragraph, and to delete the words exceeding $100,000. So that makes sure that the communications between contractor, general manager, and management team and board are consistent and thorough so that we're all aware of change.
as they're coming. It also, frankly, offers the opportunity for the board to step in if they elect to do it, or for the general manager to ask the board to step in if he decides that he wants to have them in there. It also recognizes the fact that the contract carefully specifies that we had to provide one person as the contact person and the administrator for Ocean Farms, which we've done. It also recognizes the fact that we have a very good team on our staff working this contract very thoroughly. And it recognizes the fact that the board of directors and the general manager and his team have to operate as a team for us to be successful in this building. End of story.
So may I clarify?
No, Mike, down, go right ahead.
Would you like to second that?
I'll second it.
Thank you. So to clarify, all we're really doing is just allowing that $15,000 threshold to be $40,000 so that it's a little, with the cost of things and whatever, $15,000 might be a little bit of an archaic number. But in the end, any of these changes we need to see. Gives him the authority to do it, but he's still reportable.
We're going to see.
We're going to see him. All right, we got a motion and a second to the change. I'm going to allow you to change the wording of your motion.
Marty's raising his hand again.
You're done? Okay. Bill, anything? Anybody else besides Marty?
We're going to hear about it eventually because we'll trip over it, but
Okay. Call the question on this motion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Supposed to read the motion before you vote.
Normally, yeah, read the motion, Tom.
It's been read already.
Can I clarify?
Got a point of order down here?
Parliamentarians right there.
We have a point of order.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
What? No, I said, and I clarified it.
All right, moving on. Bill, municipality.
Motion, it is moved that the Ocean Pines Board of Directors send an official communication to Worcester County Commissioners Boggs and Bunting, representatives from Ocean Pines, to request their consideration and response about potential studies to investigate the option of Ocean Pines to move to municipality status within the county.
Is there a second?
I'll make a second.
Okay, discussion. Go ahead with your purpose and effect, Bill.
County Commissioners Boggs and Bunting would give formal response to advise the Ocean Pines Board of Directors whether to move forward with further research into the concept of having Ocean Pines enter municipality status or to not move forward.
Questions, obviously. Yeah. Dan, you had your hand up first, and I'll come to you.
Yeah, your motion is fine, except for the fact that if I were Judy Boggs or Jim Bunting and you sent me a letter saying, would you support us looking into becoming a municipality, it would be a while before the hilarity would stop. And it would be a little while before I thought back and decided whether simply not to respond to you and be polite, or to send you back a letter and say, when you can tell me what the impact of this is and what's involved and what you really intend to do and why you want to do it before you ask me for my opinion on it. Yeah, you're not going to get one. So let's don't embarrass ourselves, please, by sending this letter.
Marty?
This is the reason that I complain constantly about not having a board package. Whatever the rule is these days, 33 minutes before the meeting. I have an entire folder on this. I had some interesting stuff to discuss with the board about it. I only bring a cart with wheels on it now. It's not with me.
My comments on this is, first of all, I kind of line where Dan's position is. I think it puts the board of the county commissioners in a very awkward position. It also puts us in an awkward position. I think this is, although at some logical point there is the way the process works, for all intents and purposes, the county does have to approve it. At some point, there are ways around it, but I'm not sure this is the right first step in a publicly generated letter. Yes.
I'm going to disagree with Dan a little bit because I don't think that we can presume to know what the commissioners will say or do. I agree with Tom in that I think that there needs to be more work done on it before it goes to that level. I know that the Budget Finance Committee has worked very hard and had a lot of people come in and talk. I just think that the presentation materials need to be more comprehensive, and if Marty has a lot of information, that might be something that the Budget Finance Committee might want to have him come in with his information. And really, they need to pull a good packet of information together to support their work.
They won't want my information.
Okay.
I was at that meeting, the Budget Finance meeting, when I think several of us board members were there. It was pretty clear from the people who were making the presentation that we do not have the support of the county. This will never happen. So I think their logic was, if you don't find out if your two local representatives have support, then we'll never have this happen. Now, do we want it to happen is another question. And I know there's a lot of different opinions on that. So if we don't take step one, that basically is going to stop all the communication. That may not be a bad thing. But if you don't have that step one, you can't go any further.
This motion calls on us to write a letter at this point. Any other questions or clarifications? Bill, you brought forward the motion from the group.
Yeah, just clarification. We did discuss this at the work session, so it wasn't a mystery. But between Terry and my computers, it's been in like Bolivian, or as somebody's.
So I wasn't your fault. I just, this is,
Right. This.
yeah, my motion was handed around to everybody.
Right.
Just,
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
the new secretary's fault either. It just happened.
Exactly. But I did bring it up at that.
But I honestly did not know it was going to be.
Okay. But anyway, that's their point, is that the next step would be spending money on to somebody like Dr. Derek or whatever his name is, to get more information would be spending money. That's their point of trying to send a letter. If our Ocean Pines commissioners would stop us in our tracks, then why go any further? So I understand there's a lot of ambiguity here. There's not a whole lot of work being done other than having the municipal league down here, but they just don't want to spin their wheels if it's not going to go any further and waste all their time.
It would be my position at this point, and then obviously for my votes, I'm going to vote against this motion, but I think the way we go about this approach is I think this board does need to make a decision as to what we want the next steps to be in this entire process. It is up to us to make that, not today, but to have this with some information presented at the next meeting to make a decision on what actions we do or don't want anybody to be doing in our name as far as research or dollars or anything. We've got to make a decision right now. I think the group that led us to this point has gone as far as they can go. They've done good work, but they understand they need to stop before any money's spent, and it's in our court. I just don't think this is the next step we ought to be taking personally, but I do think this board does have to make a decision at some point. I would propose the next meeting that we actually work on a motion that would allow us, maybe in our work session, we talk about it, as to what the steps ought to be. Right.
One comment, asking the Maryland Municipal League whether we ought to be municipalities, like asking the AFL-CIO if we ought to go to union.
Well, there were several different conflicting things, and they gave both sides, Marty. I was there. They gave very good presentation.
All right, I'll call the question on this motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay.
How's it feel, Sharon? It happens to me all
All right,
the time.
It's all right, buddy. It's all right. Happens to all of us. Okay, Jack.
Tom, Terry, and I are sharing responsibility in representing the Board of Directors of Ocean Pines at bi-weekly meetings with the, no, it's twice a month. It's twice a month. At the, in Snow Hill with the commissioners. And I attended the last one, which was this past Tuesday. They have a package that was made just for Ocean Pines Association, and I would like to introduce this into the minutes of this meeting. Rather than reading it all.
Every county commissioner meeting gets those. Every media person gets those.
I can't hear you. What did he say?
Every media person gets those at the meeting.
And that's right. Every meeting, they make a packet for Ocean Pines, and I was told that nobody picked it up.
They make one for Tom, too.
Did they really? They make one for you,
They
Tom?
make one for me.
They make one for you? Well, you're a special person, man.
So, Jack, thank you.
But I have a question on that, if I may.
Sure.
I don't remember.
Excuse me, or would you like to second it first before we discuss it? You're discussing it?
You made a motion for this. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Terry seconded. Okay, discussion.
This is just a question, really, but we used to have county commissioners report at every board meeting. I don't remember if it's been on this tour or the last tour.
Jack, fill them in, because we talked about that.
I talked to a couple of them down there, and they'd like to attend our meetings. So what I would like to do, if at all possible, and I'll leave it up to Tom, have Tom write a letter to the commissioners, and over top of that letter, or within that letter, would be our scheduled meetings, inviting them to attend. And yeah, that, we could figure out to give them 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever they need to talk about issues, county issues, how they apply to Ocean Pines.
So the motion is for us to accept this package. We have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Discussion.
That package has Ocean Pines on the cover, but the contents of that package are the support materials for 100% of their agenda for that meeting.
That's correct.
I submit that it is not a problem whatsoever to pull out of that package materials specific to Ocean Pines.
I went through it.
Everything is specific to Ocean Pines?
None.
In that case, there's nothing in there for us to put in our minutes. This is what I'm trying to do.
All right. You guys work it out.
You guys work it out.
Okay, done.
Cheers, John.
All right, we've got exactly 15 minutes left. We have the vote group coming in here with a speaker, and we're going to get through this. I have CPI, Bob Thompson.
Okay, I'll be quick.
Since when did the vote get put priority?
All right, first,
Since I support them and think they're a great group.
all right, let me start. The first one, 141. I have notes on that. I do not have my notes with me, so I apologize for that. I missed this one completely. I actually spoke to the folks. I just can't remember the outcome. So I hate to table this, but without...
We discussed this one before.
We did. And I followed up with the folks, and I don't have the notes on it. Quite frankly, missed this one completely.
Okay.
Are we talking about, this is
The two vote lists.
can I make a quick comment on it? The guy's got every county state permit now, okay? What do we got to stand on?
That was my question.
Again, I'm not going to, I don't want to give a comment on it. I
I
made notes,
got
I
you.
did research on it to make sure what we could or couldn't do.
Table to next one.
It's tabled.
I hate to do that, I usually have them, but I've been a little busy this week.
Okay.
The next one is the 90 Windjammer. You see, it's very unsightly. The board has given permission in the past to actually take action to clean up the property. And what we would like to do is hire the contractor to come and clean the mold up. I mean, we've done it to some others recently. I think, and Marty, you can jump in on this one, we have to find them in continuing violation before you can do that.
You have to find them a continuing violation, and they're already there technically, because they don't pay their dues. So I think we ought to improve their house, and they're not gonna pay us for it.
I mean, we could go to the attorney, but we're already doing that for the collection of the dues. My recommendation is we go ahead and get it cleaned up.
How much is it gonna cost?
The last one we cleaned, Jerry, do you remember that? Did you see that bill? Yeah, $300, $400.
Well, now you, it's $300, the guy already owes us $4,700.
It's going to foreclosure, Marty, we're not gonna get it anyway. It's going to foreclosure.
That's right.
Then foreclosure.
We're not gonna get it, so let's write the guy that didn't pay his dues a check and let him work it.
Let me ask a question on that one. It's in foreclosure.
Where does it say that?
513.
51313, it says it's in foreclosure, meaning the bank may be the owner of it. At this
Hold on a
point.
second. Are you reading that?
51313, spoke to member, property is in foreclosure. and
Oh, okay, okay, sorry.
vacated. The bank owns it at this point, bill the bank.
If a bank owns it, and we haven't sued the bank in small claims court for $4,700, we're crazy.
It says in, I don't know if it's foreclosed or not. I don't know if it's in process or not.
You know, we could do, we could just sit on it a little bit longer, it'll be just like the next one we're gonna look at, that's bankrupted.
What action does the board want to take?
Well, I think the neighbors next door would certainly appreciate
I
it,
think
looking
it's-
a little bit better. And if it's $300, it's $300. I mean, if you look at the response of the people
So
around.
that's Sharon making a motion to approve the general manager's recommendation.
Yeah,
The motion
And I'll
is to
second
first
that.
find them in continuing violation.
it's fine, and continuing violation, yes.
And clean it up.
I'll still second that.
Okay?
Any further discussion on this needed? All those in favor? Aye,
No.
opposed?
We got a single charge.
6-1, right?
I'm opposed
Yes.
because I think we're just spending good money after bad. We can take this down to the courthouse and have the bank cleaning and mowing the lawn and pay it.
All right, look, we also have, Marty, we also have a responsibility to the other citizens of this community that have houses around this house, that expect us to do things when things need to be done. I understand collecting money and getting our money back and all that is part of it, but we also have a responsibility as a board to try to protect the neighborhoods of our community, and this house that we just voted to clean up clearly needs to be cleaned up for the benefit of the residents and the neighbors there. So I just wanted to clarify, it's not just getting our money back, it's also defending our community.
Thank you. I don't know we're not moving on until you went directly to me. I'm going to go directly back. Until you take the pigs out of the pigsty, cleaning the pigsty is senseless.
Well, they had to leave that, so.
Well, go to the bank and you'll get your money.
Yeah, I'm gonna check on that, Bob. You know, because I'm meeting with your employees.
Next.
Anyway. Right?
Yes.
This house is famous.
This one has, yeah, if you see, you guys are familiar with it,
Oh, yeah.
16-foot bridge trail. We actually, you see the clutter and the mess out in front of the house. The challenge is, we don't have a right to say whether it's junk or good property or whatever. You have to go through the attorney on this one.
I can be some help.
Great.
They've been over there cleaning for 2 days. It still looks like this house is owned by a bank. We should go to that bank. We ought to grab them. The homeowner who used to own the house, Chapter 7 us for a lot of money. I don't want to mention names. I should. I mean, it's a fact. It happened. So we don't want to put any more money in this house. We can help it. If there's a bank, and there is a bank, it's on the deed now. As much as they don't want to hear from us, we need to get a hold of that bank, and they will come and clean that
So
property
this
up.
house is vacant now?
No, there's kids living in it, and I don't, they're kids. They're gone. The people that owned it live there are gone. I was over there today. They were there putting trash in bags.
I would recommend send to the attorney and let them direct us with appropriate legal action. I don't want to go on a property or send our team on
Oh,
property.
no, I wouldn't touch the property. I would get the bank that owns it, clean it up.
Well, I agree. I make an motion that we send the attorney for action.
Let's declare
Find
the
as a
continuing violation.
Continuing violation, yep.
Send it to the attorney and make sure the attorney talks to the bank. Do I have
Will-
a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye, opposed? Thank you.
That's all for me.
Okay. Appointments. I have a long list, one at a time. Tom List to the Environmental Natural Assets for a first term.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Dale Dooley, Budget and Finance, second term.
So moved.
Second?
Oh, second.
All those in favor? George Maynard, Marine, first term.
We need a second. Sure.
Okay. Any objection? Okay. Andy Romblad for the Aquatic, second term.
Second.
Gary, second. Are we having discussion?
Yeah.
Bill wants to go.
I've been contacted by several folks on the committee who do not feel that Mr. Romblad adds anything to the committee but contention. And Ms. Reister even said two members of the do not recommend. Randy is a contentious member, has gone his own way, recommend with reservation.
I am the chair of this committee and liaison, excuse me, not the chair, the liaison of this committee. And I have been attending those meetings for a year. And I'm just the new liaison, and that is absolutely correct, yes. But we have a piece of paper in front of us, I think we need to vote.
Okay. We clearly have some objections from the members of that committee and reservations from the chair of the committee itself. All right, all those in favor of Randy Romblad? Opposed?
Was that
He was catching
Susan Allwater, I'm sorry if I mispronounced name, the Aquatic, second term. Any issues with that one?
I'm going to move to appoint.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hetty Middleton, Aquatic, second term.
I move to appoint.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And one last, Judy Giffen to Environmental.
Move to appoint.
Second.
Any discussion? You okay with that? You signed it?
Yeah.
You signed it all? Okay. All
Twice.
right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Media questions? Media questions?
Still away.
Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.